Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this Committee of the Whole meeting on Wednesday, April the 14th, 2021. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda as circulated? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Moved by Councillor Allen. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hilton. Motion on the floor to approve the agenda as circulated. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary, motion carried. Any declarations of conflict of interest? If there is during any presentations or subjects, please make note of it to me and we'll get it recorded in the meeting minutes. We'll move on to presentations. We have Neil McKenzie, the YASTA Director, and he's here to speak to us about the Creator Coast project. So Neil, your mic is on, you have the floor.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us today. Thanks for inviting us to come and talk to you. Hope you're all having a great day. I'm here to, as John mentioned, I'm here to discuss a positive thing, a project that Yarmouth and Acadian Shores took part in last year, and also you yourselves as the municipality of the District of Yarmouth also participated in this project as a separate partner, and it was called Creator Coast. So we're going to take you through a very short presentation, and then after the presentation we'll entertain any questions you might have or ideas you want to discuss, but look forward to telling you about this really cool project. Okay, and I'll as well, we also have Malcolm here today too. So some of you may not know Malcolm, but Malcolm's a big deal at YASTA and really critical to our success. So I'm glad he's here to run the Flickr for me today. So. Okay, so I got to move in sync with you. So what is Creator Coast? So Creator Coast is a shared marketing partnership between Tourism Nova Scotia, YASTA, and the municipality of Yarmouth. So this partnership leverages content creators and online influencers to market regional tourism experiences in Nova Scotia. So we've been leveraging user-generated content and influencers for a long time. But this program, this year was the first year that Tourism Nova Scotia actually had a program that partnered specifically with content creators and online influencers, and then partnered with destinations like ours, and in this case, Modi as well, to do these types of projects. So why should we invest? Why should any destination invest in travel media, or certainly content creators or online influencers? So a full 92% of consumers trust recommendations from people they know, and 70% trust online consumer opinions. So this is key in our messaging and our positioning. So when we try to position the destination and we think about our branding and think about how we're going to sell and differentiate Yarmouth and Acadian Shores from other destinations in Nova Scotia and certainly Atlantic Canada and in Canada itself, we want to use all the opportunities and channels we can. And one of the ways to do that is certainly with content creators. And the good part about content creators is that folks tend to believe them more than they believe me as a brander, as a marketer. So we try to be honest in the content and marketing we produce from a destination perspective. So if we're producing images of the Cape for Shoot, for example, we try to shoot that on a beautiful day, or if it's in the winter, maybe we try to do it when the surf is really big. But generally, we take pictures of sunsets and sunrises and positive images, and it's always sunny here, for example. We always take a very positive spin on things. That type of content's important and critical and something we need to keep doing, but also content that's created by others that come and visit has basically it resonates better with people. It has more of a trust value. So it's important for us to invest in those folks that are creating that content because it builds trust in our brand. So, and we also get to leverage other people's audiences, which is the other kind of reason here. So you reach highly engaged and targeted audiences. Online content creators have very high engagement rates and a lot of followers often, so this is what we're after. We're after those audiences. We're trying to get our content in front of as many people that are interested in travel or are signaling desire to travel as much as possible. Nearly 80% of the people say that user-generated content, UGC, so again, that's something if if Dan goes on vacation and he's in Mexico and he takes a picture of the resort he's at and then he tags that resort and he gets a lot of followers and a lot of likes and comments, well, he's a user of that place, and that content is now going out online, and that resort didn't pay Dan to create that content. It's just there because Dan's basically now an ambassador for that brand, and there you go. That's valuable content. In this case, we actually would pay somebody, if Daniel was a paid content creator, maybe that's a secondary career of his. This is the next level. We work with basically professional content creators, right? So to leverage their audiences. Where's the cost? Oh, so there is a cost to working with creators, and in normal situations, and Yas is doing this a lot. We actually will basically look for content creators that have great audiences, that align with types of experiences that we are marketing. So we worked with somebody recently, Angelina Brogan, which is Bacon is Magic. She, for example, really is very influenced by travel, so much of her audience is aligned with content that is about travel. She's traveled all around the world, and because of the pandemic, she's been stuck in Nova Scotia, which is a good thing for us because we've been able to leverage her audience and her audience's engagement to create, a buzz about our destination. But in this situation, we pay her to come and do this. We have a contract. We set out specific deliverables, and then off she goes and captures content, of which we get to keep a lot of that. And then we also get to use that content again for paid marketing, like digital ads or other things. But in this case, with Creator Coast, and it was lucky for Modi this year as well, when this project came to us from Tourism Nova Scotia, they were actually able to tap into some recovery funds, and so the costs that we had initially budgeted to do this project, Creator Coast, were completely covered by Tourism Nova Scotia. So this project would be, in my opinion, this would have been a great project to do based on the pricing we had budgeted, but because we were able to do this at no cost, it's even that much more valuable. So, and again, this content a lot of this digital content, these assets are ours to use and continue to leverage as we move forward. So it was a great project this year, and really happy that we didn't have to pay for any of this. So the first, I'll take you through some of the influencers and some examples of the content now. So the first influencers we worked with were David Anderson and Skylar McDonald. So they're on Instagram as Dave and Sky. You can have a look at a lot of their content, really beautiful content. They're very, very hardworking team. They're very great to work with. They're all about the deliverables, all about grabbing as much content as possible. Very energetic young couple that loves to travel, explore the outdoors, and capture special moments. They specialize in creating adventure and experience-based content. Large, engaged, and growing audience focused on travel market. And just some of their stats here with regards to their online channels. Facebook, 5,038 followers. Not a huge audience, but quite engaged. But certainly their Instagram with on Instagram, which is very much aligned with travel, for example, is great. And then, of course, they have a lot of subscribers on YouTube, which is really good because it's hard to build audiences on YouTube. And their website gets a lot of traffic as well. Jacob Brenner of Jake's Escapes was the other person we worked with under the Creator Coast project. Jake is a freelance photographer who has captured content from destinations around the world, and he's primarily focused on landscape and aerial views. Jake was also a lot of fun to work with. Has significant Instagram audience which aligns with Yarmouth and Acadian Shores brand positioning. 383 followers on Facebook, not a significant audience, but again, Instagram, which we're really trying to push a lot, 12,800 plus followers, very, very engaged, and his website gets a lot of traffic as well. Audrey Favre was the next influencer we worked with. So Audrey is a travel blogger from Moncton. This was when the Atlantic bubble was open, so we were actually able to bring in influencers from Atlantic Canada, not just Nova Scotia. She tells a unique story of traveling as an introvert. Her content is published in French, which again very much aligns with a lot of what YASTA is trying to do. With a large portion of our audience in Quebec and France, Quebec is normally a target market of YASTA, certainly. So, and again, this content lives on, and we get to leverage it. She has quite a few Twitter followers. We don't have a lot of Twitter followers locally, but in a lot of our target markets, Twitter is quite big, so we still have to be on those channels as well. So, and then of course, something else we did this year, and this really aligns with some of the goals that Yarmouth and Acadian Shores is trying to do with regards to seasonality and expanding the market into non-traditional seasons. So we worked with Julia Back and Kyle McGregor. Julie and Kyle are, Kyler, are another young Nova Scotia couple who is passionate about creating content on our beautiful province. In alignment with YASA's 3-year seasonality strategy, Julie and Kyler visited Yarmouth and Acadian Shores in February and experienced the destination in winter, helping to create demand in the shoulder seasons. And we were actually able to get Julie and Kyler up the lighthouse on one of the sample tours of the lighthouse, so it was great, and they started to be able to create some buzz around that experience. A lot of Instagram followers, Twitter as well. So we're going to go into some examples of the content that was created. These are certainly not all the examples, but these are just some high-level examples of some of the content we were able to grab. So photography here, so we have, a great shot of Heritage Home in Yarmouth. Of course, we have the beautiful shot from the lighthouse that we were able to capture, a shot from the Le Village Historique de la Nouvelle-Écosse, and then of course we have the hot tub, which I know some of you have dreamed of sitting in at Trout Point. So this image there, the one of Trout Point, has created, and of course the lighthouse too, creates a really big demand driver, a lot of interest for the destination. We have photography and content for basically everything there is to do here, but we can't constantly push all of that content out all the time. So we're pretty strategic about the content we try to market. We leverage things like nature, culture, Acadian, seafaring heritage, certainly astrotourism and stargazing, that kind of content. And then we use those as kind of anchor lures to pull into the other experiences and create demand for hotels and campgrounds and tour operators and other experiences. Some videography examples, and I'm going to hope that these work. Do you want to? We'll let you click through and see if we can get them to work. Okay.
I wonder about getting the videos playing, like if there's anything manually we can do to quicker.
This is an older version of PowerPoint too.
Maybe is it if we click directly on them? Is it on your laptop there, Mike, or
Just PowerPoint.
can we click directly on the PowerPoint or no?
That's what's right here.
Well, you can. We'll send you links to the. We'll share this proposal with you. This presentation with you, and you guys can check these links out yourself. We're really pleased with a lot of the content we were able to grab, especially video. Video's huge online, and some of the content we got around the lighthouse and Trout Point and other stuff is really great. We're going to be able to use that content moving forward for the next 2 or 3 years. It's really what we would call evergreen content, so it doesn't kind of burn out right away. We're able to use it and use it and use it, so it creates a lot of value. So again, we didn't pay for this content, so it's really excellent, because normally we do. But we'll have to show you those examples later. So some social media results in 2021, social media engagement benchmarks. So when we look at measuring the content that we create on social channels, we look at things like likes, shares, comments, that type of thing. And then we also aggregate that content into what we would call an engagement rate. And online for Facebook, typical benchmarking engagement rate would be 0.09%. And for Instagram, it would be 1.22%. So we look to hit numbers higher than this when we produce content, and if we're below these numbers, then we go back and look at our content and try to figure out why it's not resonating with our audience, what we can do better, and then learn from that. So in this situation, here's an example of a video that they had done that features the McKinnon Inn and Cape for Shoe, and basically had a whole day in Yarmouth and Acadian Shores done by Dave and Sky. And this post, for example, had a post engagement rate of 3%, which is really good for Facebook, and had a lot of shares and likes as well. So it's just one example of how the content resonated with not only their audience, but also our audience as well. Another example of content here that had a great post engagement rate is was done in the winter, which really is great for us because we don't get as much attention and content engagement normally in the winter as we do during the warmer months. So this really aligns with some of our efforts to move into, the shoulder seasons. This was done by Kyler, and this one got a 6.36% engagement rate. This is L'Auberge de Tangent in Wedgeport, which is a really beautiful Airbnb with a hot tub and a sauna, and just a really beautifully appointed Airbnb in Wedgeport. Some social story examples. So social media has lots of different formats. We leverage as many as we can. These are some of the examples of social stories. We don't have all the engagement rates on these because stories actually disappear. For those of you that don't know, stories disappear over time, and we weren't able to capture this for the presentation, but we could grab them if you needed them. But some examples of stories here. We have Kyler at the top of the light, and again, we had great alignment with that sample experience. So they were able to create some buzz around that, and I think a lot of the buzz around the new Climb the Light experience was created by some of these influencers, that's for sure. Some more stuff here that Tourism Nova Scotia shared, and then the next examples we're really happy with. So this is, again, an example of some content that was created by a content creator. Didn't cost us anything in this case, but even if it did, that content creator has a big enough audience that led to another larger online channel, Images of Canada, to pick up that image and then use that image in their feed. So Images of Canada, for example, has over 500,000 followers. And so that put the lighthouse in front of 500,000 people, for example. If we were to pay for that, pay for those impressions, that would be, probably wouldn't be able to. It would be really, really expensive to pay for that. So normally online, for example, with Google Ads or other things, you're paying per impression, with just an awareness effort in your marketing. But in this case, we got lucky and we produced great content, and then that content gets picked up. So this is really excellent, what we would call a marketing win. Another example here is a French post by our French content creator of the Port Maitland Beach, and got lots of engagement and just beautiful content as well. So to wrap up here, this is a cool shot. We have great video from this shot too that we're using in some digital ads. When we create this project with Tourism Nova Scotia and Modi and us, we basically, everyone kind of writes down their goals of some of the content ideas that they want to have, and Tourism Nova Scotia often has one opinion. Modi wanted to obviously hit things like the lighthouse, Port Maitland Beach, the drawbridge, things that they wanted to ensure were getting hit from a municipal perspective. And then Yasta certainly has a regional approach, and we want to make sure we're hitting not only these things, but also all the other locations that we think are going to resonate with our audience as well. So it was great to have Modi as a partner because it added, it would have added more budget to the project and allowed us to have more influencers and more content in the end. But in this case, we didn't have to pay, but we still got the results that we really wanted, so we're really quite happy. Good weather, which was key too. So yeah, and there's a great shot of the drawbridge. So that's basically the end of the presentation, but I'll entertain, or Malcolm and I, or any questions or ideas you might have, and then go on to the next one.
Any questions from council members? Comments? I believe Councillor Durkee, you have the floor. Yes, you do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Neil and Malcolm. I love where I live. We're so lucky. It's just so beautiful, and we have so much to offer. What I'm wondering is, with this content, I noticed that it's all about, scenery, activities, food, right? And when we did the strategic plan, or when we had presentations, that one thing is people come and they want to do things, but there's also a component of where people like to shop. So I'm just wondering if some of the, you could use some of these content creators to go through some of the retail establishments that we have, and then that just isn't, I'm not just talking about mine, but through town, et cetera, because I think people would like to see that, oh, you know what, after we go do all these activities, then we can do some shopping, and there's some really great shops. And I think that's great for our own purpose in town, because especially downtown, I mean, we have malls, which a lot of people have, but people even from Yarmouth, well, there's nothing to do downtown, there's no shops downtown. So I'm thinking if, we did something within some of these shops that people would recognize that, oh, there's a lot more there than we realize. It would be great.
Yep. Great points there. We are working currently with it's funny that you say that, but we are working on a project right now that with another online company called Dashboard Living, and one of the plans we have with that is actually kind of an art itinerary, with like artisans and galleries and collectibles, that type of thing, and to kind of push that content out there, and that would also feature retail, local retail type of stuff as well. So yeah, that we're very much thinking that way. But again, too, if we think about like a sales funnel, we're trying to use these higher level marketing lures, astrotourism, Acadian content, openness, nature, all these things are certainly aligning this type of year to this, based on the reality of the market right now. People want open spaces, lack of crowds, lots of stuff like that we're already well positioned to do, which is good, because other destinations are actually trying to position themselves so that they don't seem crowded or don't seem that way. Not to pick on Halifax, but for example, they're leveraging a lot of content around their beaches and things like that now, rather than waterfront and festivals and that kind of stuff, right? They're trying to position their destination a bit more that aligns with the current market. So, but I totally agree with what you're saying, and we are thinking that as well. And yeah, look for that content. It should be. We're excited to see that as well. So.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
See, no one else, Mike, is on right at this time, but I was thinking along the lines too of our vineyards. We have a vineyard out in Carleton, which a lot of people don't realize. I was thinking drone videos of going over those rolling fields and nice. The orchards, beer and wine, the beer, some of the local distilleries that we have here.
Yep.
Pictures inside, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, this is a very short. We have oodles of digital content.
Yeah.
A lot of it's around that stuff. We have specific videos for beer and wine. Those are certainly travel motivators. But I love it. The vineyard in Carleton. Is it operational? Is it like, are they planning to do? I had heard that they might be doing some tours at some point. Is that correct?
They do have plans, but it's right now, I don't know the specifics of them. There's also, I've heard talk of possibly building a place to actually make the wine on site. Right now, Luckett makes it for them.
Right.
But it's something that's starting out in our area that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
I remember talking to someone before the COVID pandemic hit, and they said, oh, you guys have some of the best beer around, local breweries. I said, really? I said, did you know we have a vineyard that started up out here in the Fog?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I said, no. I said, believe it or not, I said, this place, we have a lot more sunshine than a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
Fog is also a tourism thing that a lot of people don't see.
That's right. Yep.
So,
No, and certainly we have Nova Scotia Beer and Wine Tours, local
Yeah.
tourism operator, and they would love to, even if it was a tasting or something like that, anything that people love that type of content. So, and I'm sure they would be great to partner that way too. So,
absolutely. There's so many different things that's to do and see around here. It's unbelievable. Even I'm learning. I've grown up here all my life, and I'm learning at different things or spots that I've never been now that I'm getting a little bit older and taking time to enjoy the area. So, if there's no more other questions and comments, thank you, Neil, Malcolm. Appreciate it. We'll wait. We're going to wipe down the surfaces for the next presenters. All right, we'll move on to the next presentation, item 5.2. We have with us Candace Phibbs and Rick Allwright from MED. And all I need you to do is hit the button on your little thing. I'll turn on the microphone and you guys have the floor. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, and as John said, I'll introduce myself. I'm Candace Phibbs. I've been a member of MAD Yarmouth since 2010. I'm currently the president of the board, and Rick Allwright, also been a member since 2010, currently treasurer on the board. So we want to thank you for inviting us to present today. MAD has been established in Yarmouth since 2004, so we have a good history here. Our mission is to stop impaired driving and to support the victims of the violent crime. And we do this a number of ways, through public awareness, through education, victim services, and through collaboration with key stakeholders, for example, the RCMP, who we do have a member of the RCMP on our board. We're a volunteer-based organization. We have a small core group of dedicated volunteers. And while we're dedicated and our numbers have ebbed and flowed over the years, our small number has limited what we can do in the community. That being said, we have made some contributions. We installed a memorial bench in Rotary Park. We've put on a mock crash at the Yarmouth High School. We've sponsored multimedia presentations in high schools throughout the Tri-Counties. We've put on a Strides for Change awareness walk for a number of years, and we're bringing it back this year virtually because of COVID-19, but we're bringing that awareness campaign back. We've hosted red ribbon campaign launches at the Christmas tree lighting ceremony in the town of Yarmouth, and we have worked in collaboration with the RCMP for road checkpoints in both the town of Yarmouth and the municipality of Yarmouth as well. I'd like to tell you why I became a member of MAD, because I don't have the opportunity to talk about that very often. In 2008, I lost a friend of mine to impaired driving. Samantha Aspin was 18 years old. She was a pedestrian, walking home from visiting her father's gravesite the evening before Father's Day. She was struck and killed by a classmate who left a party and was returning home. He didn't stop when he hit her. He continued to drive home. He was so impaired that he didn't even know he'd hit a person. He told his father he thought he hit a deer. Sammy was killed on impact and left on the road 300 meters from her home 1 week after her prom, 2 weeks before her graduation. She always said she wished she could be an inspiration to someone someday. She was a cheerleader, a track runner. She was accepted to Niagara College to study to become a paramedic, and she persevered through the loss of her father in her early teens, and she deserved more than being left on the road. So for Sammy, I became a member of MAD, and for Sammy, we're both here today to tell you some facts.
When it comes to impaired driving, crashes involving alcohol and/or drugs are the leading criminal cause of death in Canada. Up to 4 Canadians are killed and many more are injured daily in alcohol and/or drug-related motor vehicle crashes on public roads. Statistics in 2014 showed that crashes claimed nearly 2,300 lives. 55%, over half, of these deaths resulted from crashes in which an individual was impaired by drugs or alcohol or both. Recently, off-road vehicle and alcohol use has been brought to the forefront in our community. When it comes to off-road vehicle statistics, in Nova Scotia, a detailed report by MAD Canada in 2012 showed that 90% of all off-road vehicle crashes had alcohol as a factor. 63% of those were fatal. When this is compared to the national average, Nova Scotia is 15% higher than the national average for alcohol-related fatalities with off-road vehicles. This is simply the tip of the iceberg, and we know that. We hear anecdotal stories in the community of near misses. We see ATVs with alcohol on them. We see liquor bottles in the ditches and hear about, from the community, we've had many people reach out and tell us about stories of near misses that they've had, or the beer bottles that they're finding in the ditches as well and along the trails. And this is throughout the town of Yarmouth, the municipality of Yarmouth, and Argyle. We know that the backwoods is hard to patrol, but this is something that needs to happen.
A lengthy discussion was held at the MAD April board meeting regarding the recent media around this. This includes the recent death of a young man in Hebron and the charge of impaired operation of an ATV in a drive-through in the town of Yarmouth. We discussed a signage campaign on the trails. However, these are difficult to maintain, and with the speed of which off-road vehicles are moving, it was questioned how effective these might be. We discussed a poster campaign, putting up posters in agency stores and other retail outlets, specifically targeting the message that impaired ATVing is impaired driving. Our chapter is moving forward with a targeted social media campaign with the message impaired ATVing is impaired driving. And our chapter is moving forward with a radio advertising campaign with both CJLS and Radio CFA. We've connected with the RCMP to discuss the issue of impaired ATV use in town and rural areas to better learn what they're equipped to deal with.
From that discussion, which was last week, we learned that the biggest barrier is the inability to follow up on complaints of impaired ATV use, as no detachment in the area has an off-road vehicle to monitor trails. How can a member of our RCMP adequately follow up on 911 calls and other complaints when the offender can simply slip into one of the many trails in the area and wait them out? They have no way to follow up beyond waiting at the road crossing and hoping that they might come out or cross them. While Department of Natural Resources does have ATVs and they do trail checks, they're not the ones receiving the 911 calls.
MAD National is also reviewing concerns regarding sales of alcohol at local NSLC stores, including to individuals on ATVs. As part of getting the MAD name back in the Yarmouth community after limited activities because of COVID-19, we are bringing back our Strides for Change awareness event this year in June, virtually. So over the last 2 weeks since we were invited to present to Council, we've thought a lot about what we could ask Council to do. We're a small group and we tend to just do ourselves, but we did manage to think of a few things. Firstly, we want to invite you individually as councillors to consider participating in or sponsoring our Strides for Change event. It's virtual, meaning you can do it on your own time with your bubble of family or friends anytime between June 1st or 6th. You can find the event details on our MAD Yarmouth Facebook page. A $25 registration fee and a photo of yourselves on social media promoting the event or participating in it goes a long way to show you're committed to stopping impaired driving in the community. As a council, the RCMP need an ATV in their arsenal of tools to be able to respond to calls on the trail systems. Our recommendation is to consider allocating some funds in your budget to help support this. We can help you connect with the right members of the RCMP to make this happen. And as a community, we ask that you speak to your friends, your children, your family about impaired driving. It's 2021, and if you remember the statistics that Rick shared at the beginning, 4 Canadians die every day due to impaired driving. Those stats haven't changed in the 10 years that I've been a member. They've not gotten worse, but they certainly haven't gotten any better. You can do your part by not letting someone drive impaired. Don't be afraid to call 911 if you see someone driving impaired, even if they're a friend, especially if they're a friend. Call 911 if you see ATVs with a case of beer strapped to the back. Don't turn a blind eye. Educate and do better for the community.
We'd be happy to take any questions.
Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you have the floor.
Right, thank you for the presentation. It's a very, very important topic. I, like you, have a personal experience with that. Born many, many years ago, I was at this point, so born in 67, 69. My grandfather was struck and killed by a alleged drunk driver. So, so that's a sad thing. So to your point, not 10 years, it's been going on for a good long time. I picked up a little bit of trash in the ditch of late in around my area, and lots of liquor bottles. Probably, as I was shocked, there's almost as many liquor bottles, I think, in the ditch as pop bottles. So that's very problematic. lot of you know, Twisted Tea type stuff, that kind of product. So I'm guessing it's a lot of younger folks maybe, or younger demographic, that kind of 20 to maybe 40-year-old, I don't know. I mean, but no matter, it's a problem, it's persistent, and I think as a council, we've got to have a talk with our RCMP partners to try to, you know, mitigate the damages it's doing, because it's persistent, and it's only a matter of time until we have the next accident, unfortunately, right? I mean, I'd like to say it's not going to happen again, but we all know that the stats are not is where they need to be in terms of reduction. So thank you very much, and I will register for the Strides for Change. So
Thank you.
thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Great presentation. MAD is certainly a worthwhile organization. I don't know if you're aware or not, but Councillor Hilton and I are on the Police Advisory Committee, and we are planning to hold an extra meeting other than our regular meeting coming up. But before that time, I guess I know I would, and I'm pretty confident that Councillor Hilton would be the same thing. What can we really, I mean, great presentation, what can we really go to the Police Advisory Committee and say that we want something? So I think it'd be good that if we could get together and with our CAO involved also, and just try to plan something with when we do call that Police Advisory Committee meeting, that we can say, we know this, and this is what we need and whatnot. Now, you also mentioned about a possibility of, correct me if I'm wrong, to help purchase an ATV for the RCMP to use on the trails. Is that correct? What you're leaning towards?
It's one of the things that they've identified as a potential that they need, and the traffic lead, traffic advisory lead, has identified that he has put in a business case to get an ATV, but and he did that last year, but because of COVID, he did get shut down. I'm not sure where it got shut down. I don't really understand, but it is one thing that's.
I think it's we can jump up and say that policing is not a responsibility of the municipality, but a lot of the trails run through the municipality. So I think I think our council will be having a further discussion on this, but I believe it's a direction, that we're going to go in the right direction to try to. I don't think we're ever going to solve it completely, but to reduce it and make people aware. I've been fortunate enough not to haven't lost any family members in a drunk driving incident, but I have been aware of from my in-laws' place of residence where there's been crashes that involve friends of theirs and whatnot, right? So I think it touches a lot of people everywhere, and I look forward to seeing what we can meet and just try to come up with some type of plan, some type of request that we can help with.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd just like to point out, not point out, but recognize Cameron Duong again for bringing this topic to council with his letter last month, and what an important topic it has turned out to be. And to Candace for sharing Samantha's story, very touching. I worked in detox for 5 years, and These were the stories that devastated families were the ones that had the most effect, and seen the most return clients in the most use of our mental health programs. These are the ones that affect your entire community, as we've seen a couple weeks ago. I've seen some of the material that Matt has put out on the All Throttle No Bottle campaign. I think it's great advertising or great recognition. I'd like to see us support putting that throughout our community. Enforcement of the laws are important, including wheels on the ground. And then, like Councillor Cushing said, I'd like to have a continued conversation about what that would look like. I'm assuming because you've mentioned wheels on the ground in the RCMP that conversation has started, so I'd like to continue that as well. And maybe we can look at partnering with a local ATV dealer to make something like that happen. So thank you very much for the presentation, and I look forward to joining Councillor Cunningham in the walk for Strides for Change. So thank you very much.
Councillor Daniel Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I want to thank you guys for coming in. I'm in agreement with Nick. I'd like to see us do something to get on the all throttle, no bottles thing. I'd like to see us get on helping get the word out. It's a shame it took I know it didn't take a tragedy to get this going, but it took a tragedy to get you guys here. And I think that's a shame, and I know Lauren Cushing here always says, we got to be proactive. And ATVing is one thing. We have a boating season coming up, and again, all throttle, no bottle would apply to that as well. The boating scene can be just as bad as the ATV scene. We just haven't had the tragedy yet. And but I think the education piece, I really believe that we as a municipality should be involved in getting the education piece out to the people. There's no need for this anymore. We live in a society now that this shouldn't be happening. I know you'll never stop it completely, but it should definitely be to a minimum. And I'd personally like to be a part of helping that happen. So, all right, thank you.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo the sentiments of all of my councillors. I think it would be great if we as a council in our little bubble could get together as a group and participate in the Strides for Change. I'd definitely be willing to do that and support that. And I think that it is important. I don't know of any of us who haven't been touched by, a death from drinking and driving, or, the outlying, feelers. And I think it's the unintended consequences and the people that we don't even realize are affected by some of the things that do happen. And I want to thank you for sharing your story, Candace. It is heartfelt, and, definitely we need to be more proactive. I agree with Councillor Hilton and Councillor Cushing to make sure that we as a municipality can do whatever we can to support you, support, the awareness campaign, support Matt, and definitely Strides for Change. Thank you.
Comments from staff?
I'd just like to thank Candace and Rick for stepping up. They're plugged in enough in the community that they were aware council had been speaking about this, and we're very anxious to come in and help us learn and help us find opportunities where we can partner with them. So I know that your schedules are very full and you've responded very quickly, and I'm thankful for that.
All right, thank you very much. I echo the CAO's sentiments. Thank you very much for being plugged in, because you knew that the letter was coming to council at our last meeting. So appreciate very much the work that you do for the community, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome, Darlene. Can you hit your red button so I can turn on your mic? So thank you very much, Darlene. We have in front of us Darlene LeBlanc, our Director of Corporate Services in HR. So she has a presentation for us. So you have the floor.
Thank you. I have an update on what's going on in the exciting world of corporate services. I'll start off with legislative side. Policies, you have several that are on the agenda today that we've been working on. Social media, communications, and video conferencing. We've been looking at researching other areas for their policies, as well as trying to set up this legal workshop with TMC Law to discuss to continue the discussion that we started at the last time we brought it up. Festivals and special events, we're still looking at that one. We held a focus group with industry members and community members to review the policy, and we'll be bringing something back to council for review and discussion. Access to information is another one we're working on, and we'll have a draft of that one for May or June. In terms of bylaws, the land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy is the big one right now that's going on. It's going to be a big project, and that review is underway. And we're waiting for the draft bylaw, REMO bylaw for review. In HR, we've recently hired a new part-time custodian, Froilan Canlas. If you haven't met him, he's just moved here a couple of years ago with his family from Philippines, and so far that's working out really great. He's been a great addition to our team here. He's working part-time. We're currently in the process of hiring for a fire inspector position and the director of municipal services. So there's two big processes going on right now. We've started the process of the annual performance reviews. We're planning respectful workplace training for staff, which is, we want it to be regular training that we'll do every few years. We're looking at the new software procurement. That's going to be a huge project in itself. Vicki and I are going to work with employees to identify their needs and wants from the new software by helping them to look at their roles and their duties and the ways that they use the software now. And we've developed a scoring matrix for them to use during demos from the service providers to help in assessing the different programs. The phone system, we are moving away from the old Centrex system that we have now to a voice over internet system. The old system is old, it's outdated, and it's no longer supported by industry, so we need to move on. The new system is going to be more user-friendly, more accessible, and it's going to be more flexible in terms of making and receiving phone calls. So we're looking forward to that coming on board. Accessibility, the committee has met twice. We've lost one committee member, unfortunately, community member. Council will be discussing new proposed appointment later today. We've started developing a work plan for the committee and have been looking at accessibility plans from other areas. We've started discussing how to approach community engagement, and staff will be doing initial audits of municipal buildings. We're looking into the possibility of working with some consulting firms to do complete full audits of the municipal buildings. Occupational health and safety, another exciting topic. We have a very active committee with several new members on it. The CAO is very involved and very supportive of the work that the committee is doing. We're currently planning updated training for committee members, and we just completed training on workplace inspection. And we also may be working with a former health and safety officer for the province to complete our program here, especially our community comprehensive hazard assessments and safe work practices. Cape Fourchou, we're looking forward to opening soon. We've started the process of looking for staff there for the summer, and we're currently working on agreements with the Keeper's Kitchen and Every Bloomin' Thing for their summer parts. And the IT, I say we, but Mike is, I know a big project that he's going to be working on is rebuilding the main server. So that's going to be a huge project. Don't ask me anything about it. That's all I know about it. So if you have any questions about that, Mike is here. And that's pretty much it. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Darlene. No, I don't really want to get into the details of rebuilding a main server. It's a little bit above my comprehension, that's for sure.
Mine too.
So is there any questions for Darlene? Deputy Warden?
I have just more of a comment. Thanks for the good presentation, Darlene. Just wanted to bring up or point out that any of the costs associated with the technology of the phones and those types of, and also the server and all of the software that we're purchasing. A lot of that surrounded by, a lot of those move forwards are driven by security concerns. The environment's changing a lot, so keeping people's data safe, municipal residents' data safe, and also certainly, lots of the technological changes is not going at the same pace, it's increasing, so all those phone systems and those types of things are needing to be replaced because of the obsolescence factor. So anyway, thank you, great presentation, and looking forward to seeing all of the fruits of your labor and the staff's efforts. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Any other questions or comments? I see none. So what you're saying is that the dial-up phone has finally hit the biscuit.
We'll be able to answer on our cell phone, on our computer.
Yeah, it's
It'll be really
amazing how
high-tech.
things have changed. I remember, I'm not all that old. I'm only 53, but I remember when we got our party lines just outside of town. And how great it was, but then all of a sudden, of course, it was a party line where there's 3 phones, whether you had 2 long dials or 1 long and 1 short, and someone picking up the wrong phone and stuff. I guess even back then, your personal information wasn't all that safe. So it's amazing how quickly things change, and the technology that we're using now. Who would have thought even 10, 15 years ago that we'd have a mobile computer attached to just about everyone's hand. So it's amazing. Thank you very much, Darlene, for that, and thank you very much for your exciting peek into the world of Director of Corporate Services. All right, that's the end of presentations. We'll move on to correspondence. We have in front of us item 6.1.1. A letter from the Municipal Affairs, our new minister, Brendan McGuire. He wrote us a letter. What is the wishes of council? Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, I mean, my recommendation after having read the letter is to have staff prepare a list of issues to be discussed with the department. Based on conversations council has had, fairly recently. That would be including some of the requests for funding from the government that we've been talking about, libraries, housing, all those types of things, and the processes, not about just funding them, but about the processes around funding them. I think that's an example, but there are likely others, and on the spur of the moment, I'm not certain I could list them all, but that's an example, and I think staff will be able to sort through that with us and come up with a list of conversation points that we can forward to the minister for those occasions in which we're communicating with him and his staff. I'm assuming it's going to be a video call with a partner, so those are things we could put forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you to the Deputy Warden, so I think that there's a couple of things embedded in the letter. There's an opportunity, I think, globally for municipally elected officials and senior staff to plug into those biweekly video calls. But I understand this letter as an offer from the minister to engage directly with Modi. So I think you're quite right. If we could develop basically the list of themes that we would like to discuss with the minister. I know in the NSFM calls that I've been on with the minister, he really has a keen interest in developing a relationship and understanding how the dynamic between the province of Nova Scotia and the municipality, the District of Yarmouth, is manifesting specifically, as well as the global issues. So I would agree that that's probably the right way forward.
Deputy Ward?
Yeah, and and also, those are examples of issues that are important, but we've also got our, we also have our regional priorities and municipal priorities that we could make the minister and the staff more aware of through those calls.
So I guess moving around the table, does everyone agree with that Modi, that we get staff to reach out to Minister McGuire's office and possibly set up a Zoom meeting with the municipality district of Yarmouth and have some subjects that we'd like to touch on? The world of technology, which our Director of Corporate Services was talking about a little bit earlier, how much it's changed. I find it's an advantage to us, especially where we live in, either, if you live in one end of the province or another, that you can use digital platforms like Zoom or Teams meetings and have meetings with the minister, almost like he's sitting here in front of us, So I guess that's the consensus of council to move forward with that, Madam CEO. All right, moving on, item 6.1.2, FCM Annual Conference moves forward. You all have that in your package. I believe it's moving forward. It's going to be held virtually this year. It's beginning on May 31st through to June 4th. We're also going to be having a virtual, virtual trade show. That's exactly the word I was looking for. And we also, in front of us, that will get a break on the qualify for the early bird rates if we're going to attend, that we apply or make notice that we're going to attend before April the 23rd. So is the action that's required of that, Madam CEO?
Yes, Mr. Warden, it is. I just want to remind council that registering for the FCM requires quite a bit of work on your part on their portal. You have to create a profile with the FCM, and then you log in, and everything's done electronically. The program is large, so you go through the program and then you pick the things you want to register for, and then you need to pay online with a credit card and then expense that back. So yeah, the early bird pricing does end on April 23rd, and it's there are some really important issues for the municipality, the District of Yarmouth, that are on their agenda: affordable housing, rural economic growth, anti-racism and equity, connecting remote communities, climate resilience, women in local government, tools for local recovery, cybersecurity, workforce. They are all issues that not just this council, but our community members are dealing with every day. So it's a very relevant agenda this year.
Absolutely. So that's just for your information, number one, even though it's not in the information, it's for action. So just remember that the early bird date is April the 23rd. Is there any questions or comments about that item? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item 6.1.3, Western Counties Regional Library new funding formula. You also included in there is reasons to support libraries, the 2019-2020 annual report, and a note from Janice Wenzel. You all have that in your package. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am on the board for the Western Counties Regional Library, and we've had major discussions about this for 2 years now in terms of the funding. So there was a big research project that was done and completed by Library Association of Nova Scotia and with the provincial government, and it was determined that the libraries have been underfunded for quite some time. And so the government had come out with a new funding formula, which we have information on. There was an increase, but they haven't followed through with that. And so the libraries are finding themselves short. So they haven't actually given the 12-month notice to say you have to follow the new funding formula. In speaking with the executive director of the Western Counties Regional Library, first of all, they've done an incredible job during COVID to try and make changes to how the library is functioning, and they've been really successful with that. One of the things that started was mailing books to people, and so this has been an incredible cost. Not only that, is our staff through the library system is working at minimal wages, and so everybody needs to find a way to move forward, especially since COVID. So what they're asking for is that we would, even though the province isn't forcing municipalities to contribute at the new level as of yet, the executive director is asking us if we could look at increasing our funding to the new level to meet the needs of the Western Counties Regional Library. I am wondering if we could use the COVID money to assist with that, because they've had to make so many changes due to COVID. So if we could consider using some of our Safe Restart money so that we could meet the needs of the Western Counties Regional Library.
Do you want to answer? Would you like to answer that, Madam CAO?
Sure, so I can answer that question now. So I would agree that there's likely a component of that additional $14,206 that can be tied directly to COVID, and we would absolutely want to use that Safe Restart money for that. So if council makes a financial decision to move ahead, I would just work with the staff at the library to identify how much of whatever contribution council decides to make, how much of that I can pull from Safe Restart and how much would have to come from general revenue.
So can I respond, please? I think I'm still on? Yeah, you're still on. Thank you. I'm learning to leave it on if you want to have a response. So what I would like to do is make a motion that we forward that we recommend funding the Western Counties Regional Library at the new funding level, using the Safe Restart funds to a regular council meeting.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Is there any discussion on that motion? I do believe there is. The first one that's up on the docket would be Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham. You have the floor.
Right, and I want to move an amendment to the motion, but I will be, after we vote on this, making a second motion. So I understand that the process for increasing the funding for this service hasn't been followed through you, Mr. Warden, to our CAO, just to make sure I'm correct in saying that?
That's correct. So the District of Yarmouth has sent a series of letters to provincial leaders indicating that the challenge with what's going on with the libraries isn't about making sure libraries have adequate funding. It's about the process of having the partners step in and take on the additional expenses in the way prescribed as agreed.
So, as follow-up to that comment, clearly, and this isn't the only instance, we're being asked by the provincial government for funding for an assortment of services, and processes aren't being followed, and in this case, even though I'm very much in favor of doing it, we're talking, and I'm not doing the math very quickly, but it's $14,000 additional dollars. Our former will be, so it's gone up from essentially 55, to 79, 23%. Thanks for doing the math. So that's a huge increase year over year, and we've got lots of asks from the provincial government for increased funding that's well ahead of inflation. So in any event, I'm for the motion, but I will be making a motion after to address the issue of process. So those are my comments at this time, I guess.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo the sentiments of Councillor Durkee and Deputy Warden. I think that the funding is important for our libraries. I know that our communities use it. I know that through COVID, I was actually one of the recipients of the mail-out program because I couldn't imagine living my life without books, even though we all have technology that will allow us to read on our phones and our devices. I'm a book reader. I'm a paper-to-paper kind of person. But I think that funding to our libraries is essential, and I know through COVID they have struggled, and I would agree with Deputy Warden. I feel like the downloading or the not giving us the proper timelines to consider this new funding formula, is a concern for me, but I don't want that to overshadow the fact that I would be in support of increasing the funding, and I know how, important libraries are, but definitely figure out how we can work with the provincial government to come up with some better avenues, mechanisms to deal with these things. Thank you.
Councillor Daniel Allen.
Yeah, I agree with all three of you. The couple questions I have, though, is this is not going to be a one-time increase, I'm assuming, is what we're looking at. This is something that's going to be moving forward. Is that so? Our COVID relief money, like, we'll be able to access that this year, but will we be able to access it next year? I guess this is a question through you to the CAO. Is this COVID relief money, is it something that we're going to be receiving? Do we know from year to year, or are we going to have to change where we get this money from next year and bring it into our regular budget? How will the money be accessed from here on out?
Right, so I think we're getting on now 3, maybe 4 years ago when this process started, and a review of the formula for funding regional libraries was taken a look at. And so the issue lied in the formula, as well as no new money from the province of Nova Scotia. So there were two components. It was no additional base funding from the province of Nova Scotia, which is required, it's the catalyst, as well as the formula. So fast forward to now 2.5 years ago, where the new funding formula and the new proposed amounts were made public, and council wrote several letters about it. What I can anticipate is that this new amount, $79,600, until there's a recalibration again, will be our contribution. After this year, because we do anticipate getting our required 1 year's notice of the increase from the province, it would be considered our normal contribution to the library, and so it would come out of general revenue, Councillor Allen, after this year. Now, having said that, it's possible that costs are directly related to COVID, and if we have Safe Restart money left next year, we can pull from deferred revenue for a portion of that contribution. So as long as that Safe Restart money is still available to council, and council is funding operations that have a component related to COVID-19, we can continue to pull that in from deferred revenue into operations to help offset your expenses for any given operational year. So what I'm hearing this morning is that the entire amount this year will be from the Safe Restart Fund. Moving forward, we can have a conversation with the library to try and determine what expenses are directly related to COVID, and then Modi can use a portion of Safe Restart money to help offset your annual contribution. But eventually the Safe Restart money will be spent, and the entire contribution will have to come from general revenue. And that new amount, $79,600, is just north of 1 cent on your rate.
Okay, and I guess that's what I was wondering. At what point is this going to start affecting the other thing? But thank you for answering my question.
Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did second that motion, but I have a question about it through you to the CAO. We're talking about pulling the full amount from that COVID relief fund, but this is funding that's ongoing, so it's not all COVID expense related. Does that motion fit?
It would be wise, when we spend the money, the Safe Restart money, we're going to have to
Defend it,
be
yeah.
prepared to defend it. So it would be wise if the motion was slightly amended to indicate use as much of the Safe Restart money as possible, because we do need to be prepared to defend the money we spend.
I agree. So I had a conversation last evening with a gentleman that's quite, who advocated strongly for, increased funding to the library. He said that there had been no increase in funding in like 10 years. This isn't something that was unexpected. Although the province, for some reason, hasn't provided us proper notification, I wouldn't want to punish the library for something that they were due. That money is going to be used to increase salaries, to improve the cost of living for the people that work there, and I'm all for that. So I would amend that motion to say, can you say that one more time?
So the recommended amendment is that much of the contribution as possible be taken from the Safe Restart, and we do need a motion to amend the motion and a seconder.
Can I make a motion to amend the motion?
I would prefer that we go around the discussion table first. I have a couple comments that I want to make to this before we amend the original motion on the floor, because it could get quite messy, because I might say something that
Go
would
for
change
it.
someone else's mind.
I'll withdraw that.
But just remember that, at least give everyone a round to speak on it first. I believe Councillor Durkee wants to speak as well. I'm not saying you can't, you can do it at any time, but I would prefer, as the chairman, that to try to keep things fairly clean. Like right now, we have a motion on the floor to increase the funding of $14,206 using Safe Restart money. That's the original motion that's on the floor. But if there's any amendments after we're done discussing, I'm not saying you can't, I'm just trying to make it clear for everybody. I don't want to make an amendment on an amendment after someone else says something. So just keep your amendment in mind, and you can have the opportunity afterwards. Councillor Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my motion basically refers to the difference between the old funding and the new funding. So
Yeah.
it's just to confirm, it's the $14,000, which is what we would be using from their Safe Restart money. The library is looking at trying to make a lot of changes as well to meet the needs of the community. So it's time to update some things in the library. It's been around for a long time. And I need to say that this is just a really important service to all levels, all ages, I should say, not all levels, all ages. And at some point when COVID is finished, they're looking at certainly more community-based programming, and it's one place that is great to bring into the, to bring people together. And I just want to comment that yes, the province did not do their due diligence in getting this done. And to reiterate, there has been no increase in 10 years. And it's hard to provide a service if you're not getting an increase in funding. Thank you.
Deputy Warden?
Right, I just want to be cautious because I think there's some confusion. I understood the initial motion that we would recommend to council that the increase of $14,206 be granted. But now I'm hearing that it's to be granted from Safe Restart, and we all know that we do not know how much of that $14,206 had anything to do with COVID. So that's something that our CEO is going to work with the board to try to use as much as possible of the Safe Restart money for this fiscal. But that will be a bill that will be moving forward from our general to be sort of placed against our general revenue, or being expense that we paid out of general revenues. It's not going to be out of any revenue from over the longer term from any COVID relief money. So we don't know if any of the COVID relief money can be used for this purpose at this juncture, because we don't know, and there's been no accounting in the letter, there's just a request for 14,206 additional. We don't know why the 14,206 is being requested exactly, other than to say there hasn't been an increase in some time. There's no accounting for it in the information that was sent to us. So, again, I just want to be clear about what the motion is. My understanding of the motion, and Councillor Durkee can clarify, but that the 14,206 was to be granted, just period, recommended to council to be granted, in that it was kind of understood that staff would work with the board, the library board, to try to use as much of the COVID dollars as possible. So is that the case?
From my understanding, and I'm going to ask the CAO, that my understanding of the motion is what I've written down here, and please, Councillor Durkee, correct me if I'm wrong. The motion that I wrote down here that's on the floor is to increase the funding of $14,206 using the Safe Restart money.
So, Mr. Chair, is it okay if we just ask the clerk, the recording clerk, to read back what's recorded in so far?
Yep.
Okay.
So what I have recorded is, it was moved by Councillor Patty Durkee, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton, that we recommend to regular council that we fund the Western Counties Regional Library at the new level using the Safe Restart funds to fund the increase.
So I would suggest that council's not all on the same page in terms of where the $14,000 will come from.
I have a few comments, but I do see that the microphones are lit up again. We have the Deputy Warden. You have the floor.
Right, I mean, my understanding, and through you, Mr. Warden, to our CAO, is that I don't know how we could fund the $14,000 from Safe Restart if we don't know that those dollars, that request can be funded through the Safe Restart, is what I'm saying. So I think we should remove the Safe Restart money and just have it understood that as much of that 206 as possible would be used from Safe Restart.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, that's what Councillor Hilton was thinking about amending, if I remember correctly. And I sort of said no right now to make an amendment because I was going to speak to my thoughts on it. The next one on the floor is Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I need some procedural help because I'm not exactly sure how to amend the motion to say what we want it to say, but I would like to amend it that we fund the full 14,206 with using as much of the Safe Restart, or direct staff to work with our regional library to see how much of the Safe Restart money would make up that amount.
And then the balance would come from general revenue.
Perfect.
And so we just need a seconder for that motion, Mr. Chair.
I was kind of hoping that we would go around. I haven't had a chance to speak on this yet. Or I'm asking if he would not. I'm not telling him he can't.
Can I amend the original motion?
We're going to let our warden have a few words and then we'll discuss what we're
There's
gonna
other
do
people
next.
on the floor first. Councillor Daniel Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was the point I was trying to get at when I asked my question, and I probably wasn't as clear as Councillor Cunningham was, because this is going to be something that we're going to be moving forward funding from here on out. So the COVID relief money is limited. So my concern about using COVID relief in it at all was my issue. I was hoping we would just see that we would move it to regular council to approve the 14,000 and change. I'm not sure what the exact number was. Because really, that's all we're doing right here is going to move it to council for actual ratification, right? So the COVID relief money, I'm sure part of it can go to it this year. But if that money's gone next year, then it's coming out of our general revenue. So I would personally, I'm more than happy to vote on Councillor Durkee's motion to make it simple and vote it down, and then just have a new motion to move the $14,000 afterwards. The approval of the $14,000. Because we're getting into amendments and stuff, and I'm confused. I'll be honest, but I would like to see it move to regular council, but I'm just, the COVID part of it is what's getting me. So, because after this year, we don't know if we're gonna be able to access, that's why I was asking, are we getting COVID relief money every year? No, so next year, the chances are the whole 14,000 is coming out of our general revenue. So, if we're gonna increase it, let's just increase it, and hope that we can use some of the COVID money this year, and next year, it'll be there for future. But we can run the questions on the motions or amend it or whatever we want to do. I'm fine with that. I want to make sure we're clear as to what we're doing.
Okay, so there's no one's microphone flashing. I have a, pardon me? It's your turn. Yeah, it's my turn. We have a motion on the floor to increase the funding of $14,206, basically using the Safe Restart money. Number one, that's an awful big increase. Number two, there's no additional base funding from the province. I do believe that we should help the Western Regional Library. However, I don't believe that we should be going in full bore of the full ask. Because you got to remember, once we do it once, it's going to be expected every year. This is over a 20%, I can't remember the exact number that it was, and over 20%. And we also talked about the Safe Restart funding. From my understanding, we're only going to have that a year. We don't know if it's going to be extended, that we can use it down the road. However, there's also other organizations that would need things like the Safe Restart funding to help. We just approved $50,000 to local community groups to help them out. Everybody's struggling. Not everybody gets what they want either when they put something out there. My biggest problem is there was a process and it wasn't followed. We weren't notified. I really want to help the library. I'm not comfortable with putting forward the full ask of $14,206, whether it's from Safe Restart or whether it's from general revenue. That's my own personal opinion. I'll be voting against this motion as it stands, and any amendments as it stands right now, but it's basically going to be, unless the amendment's a little bit different, of $14,206. I think that's too much. That's over 20%. And the province is not stepping up with the base funding as well. It's just another form, in my opinion, of downloading, and I'm personally getting tired of it. The province can say that they didn't increase their taxes for whatever reason, whether it's HST, they have a whole bunch of different ways to increase taxes. Our only main source of tax money is through property taxes, period. So does that mean that we want to add a full cent, or not add a cent, but the increase is $79,000 is basically a full cent on the tax rate. We've got a lot of other projects. I do want to help the library, absolutely, but I'm not comfortable with, number one, the way it went down, and number two, the figure they're asking for us, and number three, not being notified. That's all I'm going to say on that. Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I was curious, was not the funding formula that if we put in more money, that meant that the province was putting in more at the same time? And they made like a $2 million initial payment, or not payment, but pot of money available to all the libraries when this started. Like, this is a 10-year process of not having any funding increase. And I'm okay with not, or I'm not sure if I'm okay with it, but talking about what the number that we put in, but this isn't a new topic.
So the provincial agreement began April 1st of this year. So the new formula is in effect, and the province will be making their contribution based on the new formula. It's in effect April 1st, 2021 now. So, but because the 1 year's notice wasn't served, there's no legal requirement to compel the municipalities to pay at that new level in the new formula. And so that's why the board is asking you to voluntarily do it.
Councillor Patty Durkee, I believe.
Thank you, Madam CAO, for clarifying that information. And at this point, I'll just, so just to go back to the original motion that's on the floor, we're asking, the motion is that we increase the funding as asked, and the amendment that I believe Councillor Hilton wants to make is that we check with the library to see how much of that increase would be used towards Safe Restart for COVID purposes. And so I'm prepared to second the amended motion.
We have Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, I believe, is next. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think for me, motions and amended motions are important, and we have to go through that process, but I don't want the library funding from the municipality of the District of Yarmouth to get lost in procedure that the provincial government, if the province is saying this is the new formula, and yes, we don't have to do it this year, and we haven't done it we haven't had an increase to the library in 10 years, and we are also currently going through capital budget discussions and operating budget discussions, and we see, and I've learned from that there are things that don't get increased every year incrementally, and so in the end, we have to bite the bullet and move, and maybe we don't, maybe this motion doesn't pass, but I think that, if it hasn't happened for 10 years, I don't think the library should be penalized for something the government has or hasn't done as far as the municipality. No, we don't have to do this year, and I guess, how we vote will, reflect what our stance is on that, but I feel that funding to the library is important. If it hasn't happened for 10 years, I think it needs to move forward, and I don't want an organization, a service to our community to be impacted because the province did or didn't do what they are supposed to do in the allotted time. Thank you.
Deputy Warden.
So, I think the motion's being verbalized different ways at different times. So the original motion, my understanding was that the additional $14,206 would be granted from Safe Restart money. That's what was said and recorded. So my understanding is, and of course we may not even be able to do that. We may be able to use part of it. So my understanding is that Nick Hilton's made that was moved and seconded, that Councillor Nick Hilton made a motion to amend that to reflect that very thing, that we could not.
He hasn't made it yet.
Yes, he did. He made it, Mr. Chair.
Who seconded it?
I just seconded it. There's a motion, there's an amendment.
Oh, you seconded it, did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed that totally.
So in any event, I just want to clarify before we vote. It's been moved and seconded, and the amendment does effectively allow staff to go back. We'd bring it forward to council. Staff would negotiate, would work with the board to see how much of that 14,206 206 could be applied. How much of that 14,206 could be sort of gotten from the Safe Restart. So am I clear on that?
That would be my understanding of what the direction
Perfect. Okay, question.
Question being called on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded. Vote of 6, 4, and 1 opposed. All right, so we're going to have to move back to the main motion on the floor, which is the original motion. What I've written down here is on the floor to increase the funding of $14,206 using the Safe Restart money.
But the main motion is amended now, Mr. Chairman.
Correct.
So you need to read it as amended, Mr. Chairman.
I,
Do you
I don't remember which seats are.
So Vicky, if you could just read now the motion as amended, please, so council's clear on what they're voting on.
So what I have is the amended motion. It was moved, seconded, that we recommend to regular council that we fund the Western Counties Regional Library at the new level and to fund the additional $14,206 using as much of the Safe Restart funds as possible and funding the rest through the general revenue.
All right, so you have the main motion that's amended on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion? Question being called on that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. A vote is 6-1. Please record my name. Okay, item 6.2, for information, you have in front of you correspondence from
Mr.
Dave.
Chair, the deputy warden has his light lit there.
So yes, I think that's the additional funding, I'm sure will be welcome by the Western County Regional Library. But we still do have the matter of the provincial procedure to deal with. So I'm going to make a motion to recommend to council that we write the minister and alert him to the procedure not being followed, and also that in the future we'd like details of the rationale for the increase. So there was an ask of 14,206, but there was no rationale, no breakdown of what those dollars would be going for to, that type of thing. So that's my motion. Additionally, I'll speak one more time on another issue related to this. So that's my motion.
Motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Patty Durkee.
Sorry, no disrespect, but there has been a lot of, there was a consultation that was done with the province. They invited people to attend that, it's been 2-3 years now, and there is actually a fair bit of correspondence that's available, or information that's available with regard to that increase.
Deputy Warden.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Durkee. So through you to the deputy, to the CAO, has the process been followed, and have we been provided details of what the $14,000 is constituted of, or consists of?
So, Mr. Chair, thank you, through you to the deputy warden. So you're quite right. The correspondence before council today does not provide the rationale for the new formula. It's the breakdown isn't there, but we do have on our records a very good timeline that shows the development of this file, and we do understand specifically why the formula had to be reviewed and why new dollars, not just a sharing of the existing expenses, had to take place. So we do have it. It is, you're quite right, it's not before council today, the depth and breadth of all that, but we do have it, and the point around process probably is what's most germane.
Deputy Warden.
So just for clarity, I think the focus of the letter should be around the process then. I'll call a question.
Question being called. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. I did not see your microphone
Sorry.
flashing. Councillor Hurlbert.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I had to step out, so could you read the motion so I know what I'm voting on? Thank you. Sorry about that.
So what I think I heard for the motion is, it was moved by Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen, to recommend to regular council that we write to the Minister of Municipal Affairs to discuss this process and this increase, and that there was lack of clarity surrounding it.
But, yeah, I think we just finessed it.
Yeah, change it. Okay, focus on the, yeah, and I'll add that, when we write the letter, we'll discuss the process.
Are you clear on the motion on the floor? So if question being called on the motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded? Motion carried unanimously. Deputy Warden?
Just keep my light lit up, will you? So, in any event, this does, just through you to the CAO, I think that we should look at, generally during the budget process, summing or adding together all of the additional asks of the province so that we have a number to discuss when we look at setting our rate and communicating the rate, because we've got $14,000 there. I think we have about 35 or 40,000 in a housing request that was unexpected. Over 40. So, you know, it's about $70,000 per cent of tax rate. So we're getting up toward that additional cent that was sort of unexpected and that we couldn't have budgeted for. So I think that we should have an accounting of that just for the conversation during our budget proceedings.
Absolutely agree with that, because the last motion that passed in regards to library funding, that's only one out of many. So, all right, is there any more discussion on item 6.1 for action before I move forward? Item 6.2, for information, you have in front of you 6.2.1, correspondence from Dave Ritzie, 6.2.2, correspondence from the Yarmouth Whitecaps, 6.2.3, 911 cost recovery fund, item 6.2.4, CAO Brooks Service Award, and 6.2.5, Canada Community Build Fund. Deputy Warden.
Right, I reviewed the letter from Dave Ritzie. He's a critic for municipal affairs, and it reads, I'm not sure if you saw the news yesterday, but the Minister of Municipal Affairs tabled a bill with a code of conduct for municipal elected officials. You can read the bill here and there's an indication where you go to read the bill. So anyway, the process began back in 2017, and it was all ready to be proclaimed according to this letter. Instead of proclaiming the bill yesterday, the minister announced these changes is a new bill forcing the process to start from scratch, when literally it just need to be a stamp to be proclaimed. So in any event, he's asking. He'd love to chat with us to discuss the bill and thoughts in general about the relationship. So I think that we should perhaps reach out to hear some additional thoughts from the critics. I mean, I'm just one member of council, but I think I'd be willing certainly to hear from municipal affairs critic on this issue. So what are other people's thoughts?
Guess none, Deputy Warden. Councillor Allen.
I guess I don't really have to say much, but I agree. I'm more than happy to hear from them.
Deputy Warden.
So if it's okay, perhaps through you, Mr. Warden, the CAO, perhaps we could arrange a call with Mr. Ritzie to discuss the legislation, his thoughts.
So we could probably move forward on that through consensus, if that's the consensus.
What is the wishes of council? I see everyone. All right, consensus of council to move forward to write a letter to Mr. Ritzie. Have a discussion. Is there any more discussion? Item number 7, old business, 7.1, Yarmouth County Grand Search and Rescue.
So
Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this file is continuing to develop, and I've been working with my counterparts in Argyle and the town. And what's before you is just you'll see its draft, is just basically a summary of where we think we are. Some of the figures in here are moving targets, and as you know, I've made recommendations to council about the treatment of ground search and rescue in your operating budget. And in draft budget, you will see ground search and rescue under public safety as opposed to under community grants. And so council will be deliberating on their funding contribution with respect to supporting that group.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just again, I'm very appreciative of the work that our staff has put in supporting the ground search and rescue. I've spoke with them yesterday. They're still waiting to hear, and with our neighboring MLA, Colton LeBlanc, that they're still waiting to hear the results of the provincial grant, but it should be any day now. And then we can take another look at our numbers when we've seen that. But great work. Thank you.
All right, moving on. Item number 8, new business, community spirit plaque. You all have that in your package. We received a letter. Let me pull it up here. We received a letter from Lieutenant Governor in regards to a community plaque that they had sent to the municipality of District of Yarmouth in celebrating the community spirit of volunteers. It is hoped that this plaque would be laid in the building, and what I would like to see is this plaque laid down in our cornerstone. So I would entertain a motion of council. I don't know if you've seen the plaque yet. Yeah, actually the CAO has it in front of her.
So, Mr. Chair, this is the plaque, and it's been requested that it be displayed prominently, and so my recommendation was that it go in the foyer with the cornerstone for this building. But I will read the inscription on the plaque that I can read. Our plaque is written in English, French, and Mi'kmaq, which is fantastic. So I will read, in the name of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada and all Nova Scotians, the Lieutenant Governor of the province has presented this tablet in recognition of those who contributed to aiding their fellow citizens during the 2020 pandemic. The Honorable Arthur J. LeBlanc, Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. And so this is a gift basically from the Queen to council and all residents of the municipality of Yarmouth for doing their individual and collective parts to help us through COVID.
So what is the wishes of council? Councillor Durkee. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is wonderful and most appreciated, and I can make that motion that we place it as suggested by our CAO.
Motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Item 8.2. I got 2 agendas on the go here, an old and a new, just making sure that I have the proper one. Flag policy, approach to diversity and inclusion. Councillor Hurlbert, I believe you had asked to have this added to the agenda, and you have your mic flashing, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heritage and culture, equity, and inclusion are important to me as a resident and a councillor of the District of Yarmouth, and it aligns well with our upcoming strategic priorities. I believe it's also important to our residents. I feel it's important for our residents to see themselves in the municipality that they live. A way that I think we can do that is to amend the flag policy F-046-10 to endorse civic pride, create public awareness, and allow nonprofit organizations to request flags be flown as a representation of who they are and what we do and how we can support them. I would make a motion that we recommend to regular council that we amend the flag policy F-046-10 to include language that would include this.
floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Durkee. Is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Daniel Allen.
I am in support of our community, the diversity we show, and all people. I don't really care who they are. Everyone's welcome as far as I'm concerned. That's just who I am. I think we as a municipality need to look at a way to help people. I'm just not sure. I don't want to be a person that sits and says yes to some and no to others, because I realize that some flags need to be flown, and there are some that some people consider that shouldn't be flown. I think if we're going to do something like this, we need to look at perhaps providing a space for it. Maybe a ceremonial flagpole somewhere on the property, where ceremonies can be held if they need to be to put the flag up, or this is such a tough thing, and I'm not sure how to address it. So these are just thoughts I've got about this. So amending the flag policy, I guess, would be a start, but figuring out a way to provide access for people is something else we're going to have to look at. I am a believer, like we fly the Nova Scotia flag, the Canadian flag, and our flag on our pole, and I just believe that that's what should be there. If there is some way that we can look at something to provide a flagpole for ceremony, I don't want to use the word ceremony, but for celebration of different groups, different people, different identities, whatever, then I think that's something that we as a municipality should definitely be looking at.
Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, and I didn't know how to make the motion include, and I guess I agree with Councillor Allen. I did some research a while ago when we were asked by a organization. So I did some research, and I will preface this with, there are a lot of municipalities within Canada and Nova Scotia that have a flag policy, just like the flag policy we currently have, that says we fly these flags and here's when we lower them. However, I will tell you that I've done extensive research, and I think there's a lot of good language in flag policies that talk about organizations or groups that have political or partisan natures cannot be flown. Organizations that promote hatred, violence, racism, and discrimination of any kind could not be flown. Religious organizations, no. There's some parameters about it only being maybe once a year, and then commercial entities. And there were a couple, and I couldn't find them right off the top of my head, but there were a couple of municipalities or smaller towns within Ontario that do have a ceremonial flagpole kind of like in their town square. Unfortunately, we don't have a town square, but I think to Councillor Allen's point, maybe, moving this to regular council for future discussion and then having staff come up with some ideas to bring back to us. And I know that the language can be concerning. I know that there are concerns that, we have people apply that we don't want to have them fly their flag, but I know that in the four that I have right in front of me, it talks about, anything that, any political affiliations, like I already read, anything that promotes hatred, violence, or, racism, discrimination, definitely not. But I think, just looking at how we can support our communities on a smaller scale, and it is a larger conversation, around diversity and inclusion and equity and, placemaking. We've talked about that, and I think that this is just one step, to further that discussion and, in a larger, community, municipal, recognizing. People want to see themselves in the community that they live in. When the Girl Guides drive by, they say, oh, look, there's my flag, or, Autism Awareness Month is April. Oh, here it is. And maybe we can't, fly them all at the same time for the requirements, but the policies that I had looked at cover, quite in depth of how the process happens, you know, the application is submitted, it's only once a year, here's how it gets approved, here's when it's flown, it doesn't, you know, the flags don't fly, or they can't be raised, you know, on the weekend if the municipal building isn't open. I think there are lots of good examples, and again, there are examples of municipalities who have exactly what we have, but I think it's a good step forward in, you know, working for our heritage culture and, you know, inclusion. Thank you.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hurlbert, for all the work you've put into this. And it's one thing to say that we are welcoming. It's another thing to be open and diverse. I think we as a council are responsible to our constituents to make sure that everyone feels warm and safe in our community. Myself, Councillor Hobart, and Councillor Durkee attended the Transgender Day of Visibility flag raising that the town put on, and it was very warming to see the a younger community speak the words that they were speaking, and I think we can all use a little bit more of that. So for what Councillor Allen was speaking to and what Councillor Cunningham has mentioned at our away day, you know, about placemaking and coming, creating an open and welcoming space where we can do ceremonies like this. It sounds like a great idea to me. It helps build community spirit, and it's time that we kind of move forward with this. So I'm in favor of creating a policy that does that for our constituents. Thank you.
Deputy Ward.
So as Councillor Hilton just mentioned, I'm certainly in favor of placemaking, additional inclusion, certainly of everybody in of the municipality district of Yarmouth. But I just want to be certain that, and what I'm hearing from everybody is that we want to move forward. We, and of course, on our recent strategic planning session, we talked a lot about this, and it's going to be one of our, when it's approved ultimately, it's going to be one of our goals to do a lot more work in this area and move forward. Having said that, I want to be careful to get it right and to give staff the time to work on an appropriate way forward, certainly, and the best way forward, or a better way forward. So just could you reread the motion, because I think that's what we all want as a council, to do some work in this area, to get all of these issues, including flag flying and you know, respecting diversity, all those pieces right. So what does the motion actually say?
So the way I've written the motion is, it was moved by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee, that we recommend to regular council that we amend the flag policy, and I will include the numbers there, to include language that supports diversity and inclusion.
Okay, so I see so that does clarify the motion. So I see the CEO has her hand.
Madam CEO.
COVID has provided an opportunity for individuals all around the world to do a lot of self-reflection, and I want to commend this council on taking advantage of the time that's been allotted to them to do just that. And I've had the privilege of being in the room as you've talked about all kinds of complex community issues. And diversity and inclusion is one that we are really turning our hand to, and we as an organization are spending a lot of time thinking about and reflecting on. And what I've noted and observed is that the District of Yarmouth wants to, above all, be sincere in its approach to diversity and inclusion. And this first step with respect to the flag policy is, in my view, just that first step. I recently had the advantage of some training around unconscious bias, and it was an eye-opener. And what I'm observing and what I'm reflecting on is a more holistic approach to the District of Yarmouth, both at the executive level and at the community level and inside the organization, to understand if we have unconscious bias, if we have systemic issues that we don't know about. And I think Councillor Hurlbert's right, that, you know, the flag policy is a piece where traditionally the municipality has tried to focus singularly on the sovereign flags, and innovative approaches to making space available to the community at large in a way that says this is for the community to celebrate what's important to the community and not have it confused with your sovereign is an interesting idea. But I would share with council that I think this is probably just the very beginning of our work around diversity and inclusion, and that we definitely need a 360-degree view of our organization, because I know council and myself as a leader, we're sincere in what we're trying to do, and we do not want unintended consequences.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hurlbert, for bringing this to our Committee of the Whole meeting. I just want to say from personal experience growing up, being a minority, that everybody celebrated holidays all around me and nobody recognized my holiday. And so I fully comprehend that to be an individual or to be diverse or different is something that we have to recognize and support, because in the past it hasn't been. And so from personal experiences, I understand the need to recognize everybody that in our community. So I fully support the changes to our flag policy, and I agree that this is just the very beginning. And one of the recommendations that I would like to make in addition is that we bring a workshop or do a workshop on diversity inclusion for council and for staff. So I think, again, however we choose to do this, that it has to do with just that little beginning, the beginning of the recognizing diversity by putting up a flag is a pretty simple, easy approach. Whether we do it on our main flag poles out here or we designate a flag pole in the community for celebrations is a great idea, and I will absolutely be supporting those changes.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some final insight, I guess. So I asked a local teacher what they did on the Transgender Day of Visibility, and he said, you know, we talked about it, but we recognize it every day of the year because that flag hangs in our main entrance every day of the year, along with every province, territory, pride flag, and a number of other residential flags or community flags. And I just thought that was great that kids are learning to be diverse and appreciate inclusion at such an early age. And for me, I went to a school that sat right here on this spot that probably wasn't an option for. So I think it's important we grow as a council, and extra training is definitely needed. And the flag policy is just the first step. So thank you very much.
Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Before the question is called, I do believe that, as the CAO said, that we should take a very 360-degree look at this whole issue of diversity and inclusion all throughout our municipality. What I'm afraid of, whether we like it or not, there is some things that some people find distasteful. And I'm not saying that I know that the flag in regards to transgender is one that's brought up, but what I'm afraid of is what if something else comes up down the road. The best thing that I can think of Recently, that happened, someone had a Confederate flag on their car, and it was during a car show, and someone took offense to that. I really, I do have the need, I am the warden for the hall, everyone in the municipality district of Yarmouth, but I don't know who's going to police what's acceptable, what's not. But we do need, as an organization, to have even a higher view than just raising a flag and a flagpole. It all works down to, number one, training within our staff and council to find out what our biases are and how we can repair those, and us to help our municipality live together. What I'm afraid of is the flag policy is the way it is for a reason. I don't want to be a policeman for deciding what some people may find offensive or not. And I'll give you a fine example. My grandfather fought in the Second World War. He carried the bodies that were killed during the war. He had an awful bias for the people that made that happen. I don't want to get into that argument with any organization or any group of people. I have a real, I think maybe I just better stop there because I may be digging myself in a hole that I might not be able to get out of. But I'm afraid that if we start picking and choosing and having something that we're going to have to be the police, and that's not something I want to do. I'd much rather raise our sovereign flags, and when we're talking about the flag policy, but there's other things we as an organization can do. And I'm going to leave it at that. Is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on, item 8.3, completion of the 101-103. Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham, you had asked to have this added to the agenda. You have the floor.
Right, and again, this is something that I believe is really, really important for not only the municipality of District of Yarmouth, but our region, the province. We've got a highway system that's not complete down both the Annapolis Valley route, which is the 101, and the South Shore route, which is the 103. I was coming back, just a personal story, I was coming back from Halifax recently and came across an accident. A young lady, a young mother had gone in the ditch, rolled the car, there was a baby in the back, trapped, mom was trapped. I was there with another gentleman sort of on the scene first, maybe another couple people, but in any event, I think it all turned out well in the end. But the result could have been very, very different, and is for many people. So it's a huge safety issue. There are a lot of deer, we all know that. I think this might have been an instance where there was what I can understand is that there was swerving from an animal, probably a deer, and that was sort of the cause of the accident. It's very twisty. This is south of Liverpool, and I know it's an expensive thing to do. Thankfully we have a highway to the United States through our ferry. We'll come back, but we do need a highway complete to Halifax. So twinning's welcome, certainly, and important, and certainly I'm very positive on that as an individual and think it's good for our economy to have it twinned. So those are good move forwards. But we do need the both routes completed. The 103, everybody knows the corner right on the Queens-Shelburne County line. There's that corner where tractor trailers roll over all the time. It's tremendously dangerous. It hurts our tourism industry. People don't want to travel on roads that are substandard. It is 2021. We need a highway, completion of the 101 and 103. So I think that we should is the municipality write the Minister of Transportation and ask for a conversation about completing the 101 and 103 potentially. The 103 is there's only one way through. If that's cut off, then there's no way to go around. There's no way to route traffic around. There are ways to route traffic around on the 101, but not on the 103, so that's even more of a concern. But in any event, I think it's a huge piece for our economic move forward, and also a huge safety piece for our residents and people that are visiting Nova Scotia, our American friends, when they do come back. So in any event, I'd like to make that a motion to move that forward to council, a conversation about writing that letter and who might also be copied on it.
All right, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councilor Patty Durkee. Is there any more discussion on that motion? Councilor Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Deputy Warden Cunningham, for putting this on the agenda. Every year we meet with the Deputy Minister, Paul LaFlèche, and his team, and every year during that meeting, I keep asking, when is this going to be finished? I know it's extremely costly, and the comment is it's political, and essentially we really need to push for this, because if not, it's not going to happen. I too agree, and I've been saying this since I started as councillor, we have no trains, we have no plane, we have no bus, and the only way, and we've had no boat for the past few years, so the only way to get here is by car. And I think it's imperative that we have our highways finished all the way to Yarmouth to make it as smooth and easy for people to get here. And so, yes, I will 100% be supporting moving forward with trying to get this completed.
Any more discussion on the motion? Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried unanimously. Item 8.4, illegal dumping and littering. Moving on, item 8.4, illegal dumping and littering. Councillor Nick Hilton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, welcome to my rant of the month. Before COVID, I was lucky enough to do a fair bit of traveling. I visited several countries with no organized garbage collection. It would not be unusual to pass piles of year-old garbage on every family resident, or by every family residence, or smell burning trash in the morning air, as this is the only way that these people have to dispose of waste. The entire time thinking, if only there was a way to get all those recyclables back to Canada, you'd be a millionaire. We all live in a world of single-use plastics and daily trips for coffee. This is evident by looking in the ditches in our own community. A large part of our municipal budget is dedicated to the disposal of garbage and recyclables, yet we continue to throw garbage out of our vehicles when no one is looking. I spend time every spring picking up trash in our community. Last year, me and my partner and I picked up 12 bags in less than half a kilometer of road. This weekend we will do the same stretch again, the same as before we started. This is something I wanted to address in the election, and it's an issue I continue to advocate for, or will continue to advocate for. I pay special attention to social media posts for those that spend their spare time picking up litter. I'd like just to give some credit to some of those volunteers. Tim McKinnon, a local volunteer firefighter, spends his spare time in countless hours picking up garbage. As of last night, he's picked up 190 bags of garbage this spring, including 24 bags on our airport stretch. Finding over 7,000 cans and bottles worth over $300. Gordon Watkins and Mark Brophy, who continue to work to keep our beaches clean, and to a new friend, Marianne Manouche, who not only spends her time picking up after others, but is strongly advocating for policy and bylaw improvement to better our community. This is an item that council members have shown interest in, so I think there's an appetite to make positive change. I have had some communication with Waste Check employees, or a Waste Check employee who feels that adopting current programs from surrounding municipalities would, by adopting these programs, we could make quick and progressive changes. For example, the community cleanup incentive program that the municipality of Digby, Clare, and Argyle run, in which they pay nonprofit groups to clean up the community. I have found out that we may have participated in something like that in the past, but maybe that's worth another look. And through conversation with the CAO this morning, in a spirited conversation with Mary Ann last night around section 3 of our current bylaw on evidentiary burden, also known as the reverse onus bylaw. This bylaw would allow, and it does allow, I think I was under the impression that we didn't have it, but maybe we need to be enforcing it. It allows enforcement officers to ticket offenders when proof of the offense has occurred, when proof of an offense has occurred, but puts the onus on the offender to prove it, his innocence. In other communities, this bylaw is being used to clean up the community through stronger enforcement. I'd like Modi to be a leader in this area, to start changing the culture that it's not okay to litter at any point or any time. So this is more for discussion, so I was interested to hear what other councillors might have to say and what direction we could take. So thank you.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I appreciate what you spoke about, Nick, and you mentioned a number of individuals who are out picking up a litter and whatnot, but I just want to make sure that we're not just singling out certain individuals who are doing this. Through my travels, through not only through District 6, but through many districts of the municipality of Yarmouth, I see people picking up litter, and I'd like to thank them for doing so. So I'm not going to mention any one name. I'll mention the municipality volunteers as a whole, that we appreciate what they do. This has been an ongoing problem for years, and I know when I was working with the town, there was one day a year that staff would go out and take a section of the town and clean it up, and it's something that we probably could look at here also doing. But yeah, it's good that we have the volunteers out there picking up litter, and like I say, I think it's not fair not just to mention a few of them, but there's a lot more out there that perhaps don't get the limelight as others do. So anyway, thank you to all the volunteers for picking up the litter.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hilton, for bringing this up. I actually was up until about 11 o'clock last night planning my final information to send out to the residents in my neighborhood and any other neighborhood that wants to take part. Next Thursday, April 22nd, is Earth Day, and part of that, the Great Nova Scotia Pick Me Up, you can sign up, and so you can sign up as a group or an individual to clean up a section of roadway. And so I've contacted them, and I've been registered, and I've confirmed with the Valiant District Fire Department that they'll allow us to use their parking space next Thursday. And I've sent that out on some of my social media campaigns to meet there, and you go out according to COVID guidelines, and there are permits through the Department of Transportation that will be in place by next Thursday, just in case anybody asks. So the Great Nova Scotia Pick Me Up, they actually send you a package of information that will tell you what you can and can't do and how you can do it. And in partnership with Waste Check. So after I signed up for that, Waste Check sent me an email saying that they had my package of supplies ready, so I'll have the bags and gloves and all of those things, and there'll be some vests available if we need them. So that was exciting for me, and when I saw that this was a late announcement, or late addition to our agenda, I was excited because waste is important to me. So this morning I emailed the chair of our Waste Check committee, and she said that she would add illegal dumping and enforcement to our May 10th agenda. And the other thing I want to let you know is that there is another group in Nova Scotia called the Nova Scotia One Garbage Bag Challenge. So it's a way for you to walk around your community just like we're talking about people, we see people do it all the time. And I think that, you know, talking about enforcement is one thing, but we do see and we do recognize that there are people out there who do this on a regular basis. And, you know, the Nova Scotia One Garbage Bag Challenge appealed to me because I think, well, I walk every day and I see garbage in the ditch and, you know, I don't pick it up. I will be picking it up, but I think that, you know, if we can just encourage our residents to try to make their communities a better place, you know, all for the better. Enforcement is great, but I think, you know, education and awareness really is the key to prevention. Thank you.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Didn't think I was next. I remember when I was much younger, very much younger, that the motto reduce, reuse, recycle came out, and I thought that at that point that when people started actually, you know, holding on to their garbage and doing what they could to protect the environment. And I can't believe, and I hate to say this, like 40 years later, we're still having to deal with people throwing garbage out of their windows. So I totally appreciate all the volunteers who go out on a regular basis and pick up garbage. And the problem is, people need to stop throwing their garbage out their windows. And I think that's it's the education point. It's not just the appreciation section of, oh, thank you that you're doing this, going out. It's like, stop. Enough already. Like, this is 2021. You have to understand what we're doing to the environment. And why can't you just keep your garbage in a bag in your car and put it in the recycle or garbage wherever it goes when you get home? And I honestly don't understand. And to add to that, I just need to say in public, pick up your dog's poop. Sorry, that goes along with it. And when you walk down in public areas and, you know, down to the park and Port Maitland and on the beach, like there's so much poop. It's not healthy. It hurts the environment. It's awful for kids. They're going to be there soon running around in bare feet, and that's the worst thing for you. So I don't understand. How can people just be so disrespectful to our communities? So that's my rant for the day. Just clean up, keep clean.
Councillor Allen.
Wow, I thought I was last. I agree. I drove here this morning and I take a different route almost every time through the community. And this morning I came through Arcadia, Pleasant Lake, and up through Greenville. We have a stretch of road up there, and it's almost hard to believe your eyes. Like, there's literally the white garbage bags that somebody has filled on the side of the road. So it's not just somebody that was driving along throwing a coffee cup out. They literally threw the bag of garbage from, I would think, their house. And to everyone's point, there was a gentleman with his sticker pole. I call it a sticker pole, you know, on his bike with he had a little sign on the back, and I don't really remember what it said, and he was going down through. Now, I think he was probably more after the recyclables, but if we didn't have the volunteers that we have in our community, I cannot imagine the mess that we would actually have. I agree with what Nick was saying. I like the idea of we give grants to associations every year, and there's associations. Some of them, I think, and I don't want to single any out, but there's some of them that I think that, you know, maybe could put time in. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, groups that are looking for money to help them with going away and things like that. I think that encouraging groups like that to maybe pick up a kilometer or something to help. I do believe, I could be wrong, but I think that's Argyle has that kind of incentive with their grants. I think it's a great program. I think that's something we should be looking at. Kilometer at a time, half kilometer at a time, any little bit would help. It's just terrible. I find it worse now than it has been in years, but that's just my opinion. So anyways, thank you.
Deputy Warden.
I'd like to thank Councillor Hurlbert for mentioning all those programs that are out there, and it may be useful to have those communicated through our website, because lots of times people don't know about like the one bag, those things. But I would also agree certainly with Councillor Hilton and Councillor Allen that we probably need to do something for our more formally to incent the picking up through, you know, a grant or something like that. You know, the idea where you pick up a kilometer or half kilometer, it would be the case. That is very, very important. Yeah, and people are, I think, throwing as much or more out all the time. Did a little bit of it myself, and not throwing stuff out, but picking it up. Just to be clear. So we'll set the record straight on that. Yeah, and even the you know, dog droppings and stuff. Sometimes people use those bags, but they don't actually dispose of them. Those bags are not biodegradable, so it's even worse. So, if your dog's making a mess, please do not. If anybody's listening to this, please do not put it in the bag and then throw it in the ditch, because that makes the problem worse, if you can imagine that. So, but in any event, we are a tourism destination. We're known for outdoor spaces. That's what people generally are attracted to this area for, and that does not, you know, affect people's view of the area positively, having a bunch of garbage in the ditch and so forth. So anyway, I think all those things, it's obviously a big issue. We were talking about it a lot. It resonates with each and every one of us and a lot of people in the community. So just maybe a little bit more of a focus. I know we've got lots of things to focus on. It's tough for staff to focus on everything. But I think we do need to put a little bit more effort in this and be a little bit more direct about addressing it. So those would be my comments. Thanks.
Councillor Hill.
Do you have anything you want to say first, Warden, before I talk again? No?
No.
Okay. So I don't like, I wouldn't like to leave today without a little bit of a direction. This is like a 4-year thing for me, something that I'm going to talk about every spring. Volunteers are not forever. It becomes increasingly difficult to get volunteers with the same mindset that they used to have. They don't always do things for free anymore. It's encouraged almost by organizations to provide some sort of benefit to community groups, so that there is a benefit for them to do work like this. So I think education is important, but I strongly believe it's important to give the enforcement officers the tools they need to do this type of work. I don't believe there should be that many warnings when it comes to littering. If they can prove that you that you illegally dumped material, then you should be fined for it. And I know that like Shelburne has done a lot of work on this issue, and that they've done a lot of work around what enforcing that would look like. So maybe we could have staff reach out to them at some point to see what their program looks like, and maybe work with Waste Check to see what like what Argyle and Digby does to support community groups. I know that you have lots on your plate, but these are maybe things that are already in the system that just need to be enforced or provided a little bit of support. So I guess my question is probably to the CAO on what steps we could do next to get this moving.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Hilton. You're right, this is perennial, Councillor Hilton. We seem to have a surge in dangerous and unsightly and illegal dumping and littering every spring. I think it's normally it's a function of the snow melt telling on us. We didn't have that much snow this year, but it's also a function of people getting out and about more and people cleaning and purging. So you're quite right, there is a cyclical nature to it. So we have a great relationship with WasteCheck, and that's who we rely heavily on to accomplish some of the goals that you've outlined today. And so my first step will absolutely be reaching out to the general manager at WasteCheck, understanding what they've set for goals and targets this year, have a conversation around the spirit with which you'd like to see them enforce our solid waste bylaw, some pieces around what I think I've heard you say today in terms of taking a fairly strict stance on not tolerating illegal dumping and littering. If we can prove, if in the material that we find there are identifying materials, then we act on them now and to continue to act on them probably in a more robust manner, I think is what I'm hearing you say. So that's kind of how I would approach it. And start from there. I will share that, WasteCheck is a regional organization that has not, in a significant amount of time, seen a major adjustment to the financial inputs. And education and enforcement are extremely expensive. So don't be surprised if we hear back from them, maybe some things around what it will take for them to help us out.
That's also, if I remember correctly, I did hear Councillor Hurlbert say that the chair of that, Linda Gregory, has been notified, and it is going to be on their agenda item, and I believe it's Monday you guys meet. What was that? May 10th. I believe it's Councillor Durkee, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, we start discussion and ideas come into my head. And I'm just wondering through WasteCheck, if we could even think about sponsoring signage that we put somewhere to not to say don't litter, but just, some type of billboard saying how we value our properties and our communities. And, I'm just throwing that out there for future discussion. If something like that might be of benefit in certain locations to remind people. It's like the flashing sign for the speed limit. When you see it, you slow down. If you see a sign talking about, the value of beautiful communities, if that might help, just tossing it out there for future research or discussion.
Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, just as a follow-up, I did ask the chair to add it to our May 10th meeting, and I'm sure just as our discussion here has been robust, it will be there, and hopefully we'll have some takeaways that will be a result of the discussion on May 10th. And I also want to plug, WasteCheck has an app that you can download on your device. It's called Recycle Coach, and part of that, not only does it tell you when to put out your garbage and what goes out on any given week, but you can actually go in to report a problem, and you say select the problem, and you say illegal dumping, and then you put the description with the details. I actually did this last night with the approximate address. I didn't know the name of where it was, but I had the address, and then you can even upload a photo. So I took a quick photo as I was walking in the neighborhood and sent it off to them. And when I talked to the general manager at WasteCheck a couple of months ago, just as, hey, this is who I am, what do you do for us, what do we do for you? He said that that's a great way to anonymously report. People don't always want to have their name attached to a complaint, and so this is a great way to report when you do see illegal dumping that you think can be connected to a property, so just put that plug out there as well.
Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm going to be very brief. I think we beat this illegal dumping, littering, quite severe. All I'm going to say is we'll never have to worry about WasteCheck not being around. That's a organization part that we fund will be there forever because of this problem. It's not going to, we can which we should, we can educate as much as and often as possible, but there's still going to be that littering factor. So anyway, we'll have to keep pursuing, but Waste Check is doing a good job, and they'll always be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm actually looking forward I'm looking forward to seeing the committee report from Waste Check in this regard, since I hear that it's going to be an agenda item. Is there any more discussion on this item from council? Hearing none, move on. 8.5, committee meeting notifications. Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I think it's been made clear by our residents and some of our councillors that we need some improvements on how we receive notification on meetings that take place not only within our municipality but also regional meetings. We are partners with a large amount of organizations, and I think as a new councillor, for me, I want to be engaged, but I also want to be informed, and I know that we have our monthly reports, but sometimes, for me, most importantly, if I have the time and can take the time to listen firsthand to some of those meetings that take place, I think that it's important for me and my learning, but I also think it's important for our residents to know when these are happening. So I would like to make a motion that we recommend to regular council that staff create a calendar on the municipal website, in addition to sharing on our social media sites, that we include all MODI meetings and regional meetings that would include links to live feeds, minutes, and agendas. Just a one-stop shop where we and our residents can see what's happening, when it's happening, and yes, thank you.
Motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Durkee. Is there any discussion on that motion? I have a comment in that regards. What I'm afraid of, if we have a committee calendar like that comes up, some of the problem is some meetings are canceled. So who's responsible for updating the schedule that might be on our website? Because the CAO sometimes, or myself, is not apprised of whether there's meetings canceled, whether there's meetings postponed, whether there's meetings that are not happening due to a lack of quorum. Sometimes the meetings get changed around from week to week to try to get a quorum. That sounds like a lot of work, because there's a lot of committees that go on, and sometimes there's a lot of date changing. We do have most generally regularly scheduled meetings on a lot of committees. I'll give you a fine example. The Yarmouth International Airport Corporation, another one that's even better is REMO. We were supposed to have a regularly scheduled meeting earlier this month, which didn't happen for a couple of reasons. And if it's there and the information is wrong, people are going to be just as upset. I don't hear a lot of requests at times for committee meetings. However, it has also been stated that it's usually up to the chair, and usually what happens in our council committee meeting reports, that's usually where it should be brought up that the next meeting date is, and every time that I write one of those, I make sure of that, so the information is there in a roundabout sort of way. Madam CEO, do you have anything? You turn your mic on.
Yep. So I know what was moved and seconded sounds simple, and it's not at all simple. And in addition to that, it involves a lot of groups and agencies that the District of Yarmouth not only has no authority over, but they have no responsibility to notify us if things are changing. The implication around what's being suggested is what I'm thinking sounds a little bit like a council committee coordinator, and that function doesn't exist inside the organization operationally right now, so there's a lot to consider moving forward.
Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam CAO. I think that for me, I know logistics is money, time and money, resources always going to be a problem, or always going to be a discussion that we have within council on where our priorities are. And in my 5.5 months that I've been here, I have had probably 6 calls, emails, or texts after a meeting has taken place to say, I couldn't find it, I couldn't get logged on, I didn't know where it was, and I didn't have a reply for them. And I know that there are some committees that say this is how we're going to do it, and I understand, you know, the concern about something being canceled, but I would rather have something published somewhere on a regular basis that says, here's what we're doing, here's how you can find the link, here's how you can be made aware, then, and if it has to be canceled, then it's canceled and we say, unfortunately, it was canceled, not, oh, I have no idea how you find a link to that. I think for me, it's about awareness and making sure not only the public, but myself are aware, and our fellow councillors are aware of when meetings happen. You know, there are some that I'm alternates on the committee, so I'll get the meeting request, but then there are some that I have no idea they've happened until after they've happened. And I do know that we rely on our fellow councillors to bring back those, you know, those highlights, but it is just that, just a highlight, not the ability to see and hear. And not only for me, but I think I know our residents want that access to us, and I think that we have an obligation. And I'm not saying that it has to happen tomorrow, I'm not saying it has to happen next week, but I think that we need to have some discussion, you know, at future meetings, at a regular council meeting, on how we can make this happen. Thank you.
Deputy Warden.
So I agree that certainly better communication is always better, but having said that, I won't be voting in favor of this motion simply because I think it's almost too directive. It's a complex, as the CAO's outlined, it's sort of a complex piece. Doing additional things is always good. It's just, I'm not certain just how much work will be created by this additional thing. I think that staff understands from our conversation that, you know, we're trying to communicate, you know, when the meetings are with the public as well as we can. We've actually, that's part of the function that we have the other Victoria for, and we've spent some additional monies in those areas. So it's not like we're not doing additional things in those areas as far as communicating out to the public, doing a much better job. I just don't want to have a motion on the books that directs the CAO kind of in a management area too directly. So I think this moves away from the governance piece, and I think the motion does sort of say you're doing it wrong, staff, entirely wrong, and you got to correct it. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think staff's doing it entirely wrong, and I don't think that I want to vote. I think it's a little too, I think a motion's a little too heavy-handed in this instance to direct staff to do something that's simply put in a motion, but it's a very complicated undertaking. So for those reasons, I won't be voting in favor of the motion.
Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm having trouble trying to digest all this other stuff going on. I like to try to keep things very simple if I can. We all have our calendars that are loaded with the meetings and the times and things like this. So I think it's just an extra workload for our staff to just try to keep this going. If a citizen is interested in knowing about a meeting, they let them contact their counselor, and we should be able to tell them that you know, there's a meeting coming up on Thursday of such and such date and at such and such time. If you wish to you know, I really can't see the need to really blow this right out of the water sort of thing. I think as the councillors, we represent the citizens who voted us in here, and I would say they trust us to try to represent them, and if a point comes up where we need to call a special meeting to inform our citizens in each of our districts, but then that is up to us. And So I don't know where we're really going with all this, this kind of, whatever you do is gonna cost money, and we went through an operation budget, a proposed operation budget the other day there, and my goodness, you know, if we keep adding cost, we're gonna have to raise the tax rate really high, so, anyway, I have to go with Deputy Ward, and I won't be voting on this either.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I can respect both sides. We as new councilors are adding a fair amount of work for staff, and I appreciate how hard they work. I do find it in the days or the age of technology, you know, a little bit difficult to follow along, like to find the meetings that they're not all in our calendars, only the ones that we are part of are in our calendars. So with things like the Mariner Center expansion and the Bridge Committee, those are things that I want to be kept informed of, and if I have time to tune in, I wanted them to be easily accessible. And I do think they're not presently. So I feel like they could be made available in our calendars fairly easily, but I do realize there's work attached to that. And although I'm not 100% sure if the motion is exactly worded the way it needs to be, I am in favor of a community-based calendar that allows people to follow along. It could be simple as one tab on our webpage that just lists the monthly meetings and when they normally are, and that they're, you know, the dates may be changed, and that this webpage isn't going to be updated daily. Maybe it's updated every Monday morning, I'm not sure. But there's got to be common ground here somewhere. The community lives on social media. There's an expectation that things are, you know, at your fingertips, and I've found it difficult the first couple months to do that, so thank you.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's really important, and for transparency's sake, that our community knows about the significant organizations' meeting plans. In fact, I just heard that there's a Mariner Center meeting on the 23rd, and I didn't know anything about that. So it would be really helpful, like things like planning advisory, which would be pretty simple to put in because that's a regularly scheduled meeting, or our committee of the whole meetings, our regular meetings, any Mariner Center accessibility. I think it's really important that our community is aware that these meetings are happening. And I'm just, while we're discussing this, kind of going on different municipalities' websites, and I can see that there is municipalities that do have it. In terms of cancellations, I think that if it happens, it happens, but at least people would know. I don't think it's necessary to update that on a regular basis. I just think if we had some of the major council, like there's a difference between the legal entities and the other committees that we're sitting on. Maybe not every committee, but the most important ones would be to everybody's advantage if we had that. Even for me at times, sometimes, you know how we get notices adding to a calendar. I just wonder if we can transform that just onto our website, because that just has most of the information on it, although I have to use two separate phones and locations to find it. A central location would be of benefit to everybody, I think. So I would agree.
Councillor Durkee, can you turn off your mic?
I certainly can.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
So, I guess in principle, I agree, but only to an extent. I believe that we as councilors, if we have certain meetings that we're interested in, is there any reason we couldn't make a request to be added to the mailing? You know? And did you not get added? Okay. Like, I mean, I'm gonna pick on you for a second, Councillor Durkee, but you seemed upset that you didn't know that there was a meeting on the 23rd, which is like 10 days away. So if you know now that it's 10 days away, I don't see why, like, if I knew 10 days ahead that there was a meeting, I'm not upset that it didn't come in my calendar. It gives me time to plan for it. If there's meetings I want to go to, I try and make a point to find them. I'm not sure how hard it is, I guess. I've never really had that much trouble finding them. But I know that I would think, and apparently Councillor Hurlbert's correcting me, but I would think that if I made a request to be added to a mailing list for PAC, well, I'm just using that as an example, that whoever's sending out the invite could also send it to me. And if I have a social media account or whatever, I could, if I have residents that are interested in that, then I'm sure I could put it out there without having to go through, I can only imagine the amount of meetings, like some of us have way more meetings than others. So if you start adding them all together, it's a job in itself to keep up with everything. My opinion, that's how I would see it. I don't know how anyone would keep up with every meeting that's going on, times, trying to get it there. Someone would be on that site all the time. But I think we could be more efficient in getting it out. I'm not 100% sure if this is the exact way. So I'm going to ask you, Ms. Pierce, if you would read the motion back to me so I know exactly what I'm voting on.
So I have, it was moved by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee, that we recommend to regular council that staff create a calendar on our municipal website which shows all monthly meetings, including councillors, that can be viewed by the public.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
Deputy Warden.
So I agree. I mean, I don't know anybody that that would disagree with the spirit of the motion. But the issue is, it's a very simple motion that addresses a very, very complex issue. And Councillor Durkee, just a few seconds ago, talked about the issue, and I think she talked for about maybe 2 minutes about the issue, which is appropriate, but it's a very complicated issue is what I'm saying to that point. We've got a whole bunch of different committees, so again, a motion is directing staff to do something explicitly. The motion's not explicit enough in its direction to really give any direction. It's just basically saying do it better and include everybody, and that. So I think it's unfair for staff to be directed in that way. If we've got an issue, I think we can manage it. I think maybe we do. There's always an issue with communication. You can always do it better. You can always make people more informed. There's no end to it, and I think that's a good thing. People are hoping to be more informed. But having said that, I just don't think doing it this way is the way to move forward. I think staff's aware that a number of councillors have an issue with the status quo maybe, and you know, they're always looking to do things better and communicate things better. So at this point in time, I think it's an iterative process that we'll just have to go through. And I'm very uncomfortable with directing staff to do something. You know, if they want to come to us with the plan to improve things and we can discuss it, that's fine. But to tell them to do something without, I just don't think the direction is nearly clear enough for them, and therefore I just can't vote for a motion like that.
Councillor Durkee.
No, she's not lit.
Oh, you turned it off?
Yep.
Okay, Madam CAF, you had something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd just like to speak to a couple of themes that I've seen come up through your conversation. And so I am compelled to say a little bit about transparency. The way the conversation has gone around the table today, I wouldn't want anybody to think that if we don't publish a calendar of council committee and committee of council meetings that this council is not transparent. All of the meetings of all of the committees are available on our website. They get posted every month to the councilors' monthly reports. We are open to the public here today. Anything that we record on Zoom, we make available live. Our records are available to the public to review anytime they want. Councilors are accessible to the public. I'm accessible to the public. We are transparent. Can we improve? I'm always looking for ways to improve, because to Councillor Hilton's point, being transparent and the vehicle through which you are transparent are not the same thing. And so we can always be looking to improve that. Another theme that I've heard come up is around governance. So the structure of this government is that each one of you represent a district and you're elected by that district. And then you come together and you take the workload and you share it and you report back to council on that work. That's the sharing of the work. Having a council that's leaning in and wanting to be engaged and wanting to learn and understand is a good thing. We just need to find a middle ground whereby councilors, in particular, who want to understand the business of council, can do that in a way. My concern will be with when we choose our method, that this municipality is not cast in any kind of a dim light if we're communicating third-party information and it's no longer accurate. If I have some real concerns about any kind of a unintended consequence around that, and we can have a conversation around that to the Deputy Warden's point in terms of the spirit of the request and then how we choose to achieve the goal. And then, with respect to some requests that have been made, there have been global requests to receive every meeting notification for every single meeting, and that's not necessarily within the ability of anybody at Modi to answer, because Modi isn't necessarily involved in every meeting and every meeting notification. So I just would like to make the record reflect that a little bit more accurately. So, always, whatever the wishes of council are, we're here to try and help you achieve your goals. And I appreciate the conversation this morning and want to work shoulder to shoulder with council to continue to deliver good government to the District of Yarmouth.
I'm going to make a quick comment on that, the motion on the floor. I certainly empathize with Councillor Hurlbert in regards to trying to keep public informed. However, I've been at this a little while, not a long time, over the past 12 years. The biggest issues that's come up that people want to be informed on usually is planning advisory issues, and just recently, the Mariner Center expansion. The Mariner Center expansion, we don't, as of right now, have a regularly scheduled meeting. And that's one lately that I may have, as chairman, dropped the ball in regards to getting the word out on when the next meetings are called. It's always been said that if you want to know when the next meeting is, notify the chairman. There was someone that I didn't notify when a meeting was going on, and they were pretty upset over that, only because that this issue's out in the forefront of the whole county, as a matter of fact. It's a very important issue to a lot of people. I would have no problem in regards to posting, like just having a little blurb on our website that this is when the regularly scheduled meetings normally are. Like for PAC, it's this date. For REMO, it's this date. But when it comes to meeting cancellations and all that other stuff and third-party meetings that we're involved with, that's quite a kettle of fish. And as the motion stands, I'm not going to be voting in favor of it. Councillor Hilton?
Thank you, Warden, for those comments. Again, I think it's about common ground. There's just some improvements that can be made, like the Mariner Center Bridge Committee on the calendar. It could just read where to find those meeting dates, if it's through our social media website or other things, like just some direction. And that goes for me too, because honestly, I wouldn't know where to find some of those. And to what's important, that depends on, to me, it depends on who's asking the question. And I'd like to hear the motion one more time before I make that decision. But, you know, there's somewhere in the middle of these two things that would benefit our community and benefit us as councillors, because we have technology with us every day. There's no reason that I shouldn't see an email about every committee that this council is a part of. Thank you.
So the motion again is, it was moved by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert, seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee, that we recommend to regular council that staff create a calendar on our municipal website which shows all monthly meetings, including councillors, that can be viewed by the public.
Any more discussion on the motion? Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just looked on the town of Yarmouth, the town of Digby, and Clare, and they have an events calendar on their websites, which you
That's
can
an
access.
events calendar, though.
Just- May I finish, please?
Yes, you may.
On that, it includes board meeting, committee meetings, council meetings, regular council meetings. The town has the Mariner Center meeting, the accessibility meeting. So that's where if we're doing, I don't think we need to include, I think I would agree with Nick that there's got to be some common ground, that there are specific committees like PAC or the legal boards, et cetera, that we are involved with that could be included. But, you know, just looking at, there's three, so I'm on Clare right now, so they have board meetings, and you click on, and then you have community events, sports, like they have a much bigger calendar. So I guess it is doable, obviously, from the three different municipalities that I looked at. So I'm just wondering if that's just something that maybe to start with, our staff could just look at how complicated that would be just to put a calendar on our website.
Deputy Warden.
We're definitely in the weeds.
Yeah.
Big time. So, again, like, I think to Councillor Durkee's point, I think this is better served by having staff look into it and in an iterative approach, try to continue to improve things. I think a motion is this is really a management type thing. I don't think we're in a bad place with our communication generally. We're looking to improve it all the time, and I think this conversation maybe informs staff a little bit about some of the issues that additionally that exist, and for that reason, I just don't think the motion's the way forward.
Question being called on the motion. Please raise your right hand. All in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? A vote of 4, contrary 3, 4, so the motion is defeated. Moving on, item, actually, it is 12 o'clock. We still have a couple items here to go on. I believe as per our policy, I need a motion to either extend or recess. Deputy Warden?
I'll move to extend the meeting.
Madam CEO, for clarification, does that need to have a finite time for an additional hour, or?
There should be a clarification either by time or to complete the items on the agenda.
To complete the items on the
All right, so the Deputy Warden has made a motion to extend the Committee of the Whole meeting to complete the items on the agenda. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Motion on the floor to extend the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Okay, moving on. Item 8.6, Conservation Consultant Report. You all have that in your package. You have the PMCP report from March 2021. What is the wishes of council? Councillor Durkee, I believe, yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The research, the conservation consultant report was on the Port Maitland cattle pound, and it appears that it is a significant piece of heritage infrastructure that is unique to Nova Scotia. I think it's the only one that's in Nova Scotia. So it sounds like that it is something that we should be moving forward with trying to preserve. That being said, I heard a really interesting story from a resident the other day about how a number of years ago there was conflict over a cow that was loose, and it ended up being put in the pound until whoever the owner came and claimed it, so it was significant. I like the idea about it being a monument as opposed to being a site that people could go park and see. So I know that we've had some difficulty, and so I think what we're looking for is some recommendations from council as to how to proceed with maintaining this important piece of heritage.
All right. Thank you. Since no one's microphone is on, I see in here in the suggested development strategy that the first thing they ask for is community engagement. And in regards to the next step, the district's plan for stewardship of the site is to engage the community, particularly the local agricultural community, in supporting its efforts to protect, preserve, and importance of the artifact of farming life. So my suggestion would be to do that right off the bat, is to engage the community, the farming community, the community in general. That would be my personal suggestion, because from the recommendation that I seen come forward from your committee, the Heritage Committee would be to look for suggestions. What I'm following is just the report that's been supplied to us. So that would be my personal suggestion. I'm not sure of any others. Councillor Durkee, you have the floor again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The biggest issue to start with is trying to make contact with the homeowner and have a discussion, because it's been done by mail and by people. I think our organization has knocked on the door, and so I'm just wondering if there's an alternate way that we can try and communicate with this person to try and ask about the maintenance, which is of prime importance, unless we know of a response. And second, another suggestion was that possibly if we can get this up and maintained, that we put a panel somewhere to tell the story. And my recommendation was that as a placemaking, we start thinking about maybe the piece of property where the fog alarm building is. We could put a sign up there, people could stop and read the information about. Again, this is a much bigger discussion in terms of creating this placemaking in Port Maitland. But right now, it's a matter of how do we make contact, and how do we, so I would appreciate any suggestions of, because, I'm not even sure if we get 4-H involved, if there'll be a response to that as well. So it's the question for council is where do we go from here, again, unless we have to look at, I know this is to a supreme extent, but to expropriate some of the property around the cattle pound so that it can be maintained.
Madam CAO, you said you had a comment?
So I guess what I'd like to offer maybe as one of the steps towards where the consultant is recommending council go with this, engagement strategies can be as creative and as tailored as they need to be for the particular situation. And so the primary recommendation here is for the district to engage the community and some groups within the community to kind of hear their story and also see if there's an influencer, which would mean an individual, who can help us make contact with the partner we need in order to move forward. So my recommendation would be committee of the whole recommend to council that staff develop an engagement plan to begin the work as recommended by the consultant.
I'll make that motion.
All right, if you made a motion on the floor, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. Any discussion? Councillor Hurlbert, you had your microphone flashing. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make this brief. As part of the Heritage Advisory Committee, and this being a new file for me, I understand that it's a long-standing file for the municipality. And I think that if I can speak for the Heritage Advisory Committee, we just feel there's nothing more that the committee can do. The staff here at the municipality have tried to make the contact. So I think, to Madam CAO's, point and, the motion that Councillor Durkee has just made on, to try to figure out, because we can talk about community engagement, but if we can't even get to the property to clean it up and maintain it, that's part of the bigger issue is, we don't want people to be stopping on the side of the road, but we don't want it to fall in disrepair so that it becomes a site that is, unsightly or that can't even be recognized. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Okay, item 8.7, policies and bylaws. We have 8.7.1, the request to repeal the purchase order policy P-088-00. Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you can see, this is a policy that's been on the books for just about 21 years, and I'm requesting that council repeal it just because it doesn't align with the generally accepted accounting practices any longer.
What is the wishes of the committee of the whole? Deputy Warden?
I'll move that we forward purchase order policy P-088-00 forward to council for repeal.
Motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Allen. Any discussion on that motion? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Okay, item 8.7.2, public participation program P-102-21 for discussion. Madam CAO.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to invite the Director of Corporate Services to come back down to the presenters table. Her role is to lead the development of these documents along with me for presentation to council. So the public participation program policy is a legislative compliance piece. We're required to have this under the Municipal Government Act. So we've done a little bit of research, and we've provided you with a draft document that we think fairly represents what best practice might be. And so we submit it to you for your discussion.
Deputy Warden, you have the floor.
Well, I'll put it on the floor, so I'll move that we move the public participation program policy P-102-21 forward to council for approval.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. Is there any discussion on that policy? Question being called on the motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Move forward to regular council. Moving on, 8.7.3, certificate of recognition.
Thank you,
Madam
Mr.
CEO.
Chair. Yep, so we've had a couple of instances arise in the recent past where elected officials have wanted to recognize something, and we've recognized at the staff level that a framework around this would be beneficial for the community and for elected officials. So Darlene and her team did a little bit of research, and what's before you is what we have found to be kind of common practice around Nova Scotia in terms of certificates of recognition. So we submit it to you for discussion.
I think this is something that's solely needed. Sometimes it was a little unclear or murky in regards to birthdays, anniversaries, things like that. I remember getting a request here just recently of someone who turned 86. And we didn't really have a policy that outlined on how we did that. So right here it says every 80 years and every 5 years afterwards, and after 100 years, every year, maybe on a yearly basis. Wedding anniversaries at 50 years and every 5 years. So I think it puts some clarity for me on how that whole thing is put out. Who is next?
Me? Yeah.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that we're moving forward with this, so I will make a motion to move the Certificate of Recognition Policy C-488-21 to council for approval.
All right, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Allen. Any discussion on the motion? I see Deputy Warden, your microphone is on.
Yeah, and just wanted to sort of restate, maybe in a little different way, what you've already said, Mr. Warden. I think it also, I think it's a great thing, it's an improvement, and it clarifies to certainly the residents of the municipality district of Yarmouth the process and procedure. So I think it's a great thing. It's simple but needed. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? If not, I'll entertain the question. Question being called on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Move on to item 8.8, Fence Arbitration Committee. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a situation has arisen that prompted me to dig into legislation around fence arbitration, and it appears we may need to convene the committee for a situation. I'm not sure. So in trying to be proactive around that, I recognize that the way we had structured our appointments to the Fence Arbitration Committee weren't actually legislatively compliant. And so before you is a recommendation that Council pass a motion stating that the CAO shall appoint a staff person to the Fence Arbitration Committee pursuant to the requirements of Section 4 of the Fences and Detention of Livestock Act. And I'm recommending a staff appointment as opposed to an elected official because it's very much like bylaw enforcement.
Deputy Warden.
So I'll move that we move the recommendation as circulated of the CAO forward to council for approval.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Is there any discussion on that motion? I will say this much. I think it's a great idea that a staff member be appointed to this committee rather than a political person, because unfortunately that might become quite a dicey situation. All right, is there any more discussion on that motion? Hearing none, a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, now I need a motion to go into camera for four items. Moved by Councillor Nick Hilton. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. All right.